Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Fan Fuel Motorsports Podcast. This is a podcast where fans fuel talk about motorsports. I'm Alex Harrington, and as always, I'm joined by Nathan Ball and Colton Cranmore. Tonight, we've got an action-packed lineup for you guys. We've got a lot to talk about. I mean, previous weekend and then the upcoming weekend, one of the biggest races of the chase, probably the biggest wild card the playoffs has. And we're going to have a couple guests on later. My dad and his best friend Danny are going to be on, and they're going to talk to you about a lot of wild stuff that they did throughout their college and post-college years at Talladega. And it's going to be a fun ride. I think you guys will all be very happy with that. But before then, Colton, you made a trip down to the Las Vegas Strip and went to go see some racing on Saturday and Sunday. How was your trip to Vegas?
The trip to Vegas was a lot of fun. I mean, we walked the strip on Friday night last week. Saturday we just kind of hung out, went to the Xfinity race, and then Sunday we spent literally all day at the track. I think we got there at like 9:30 a.m. and didn't leave until about an hour and a half after the race ended. So I mean, it was a lot of fun. Going down there, we had neon garage passes, so we got to go out under the stands, go walk up the top of the garages and down low and see through them. If y'all have never been or seen to Vegas, they have a little fan zone kind of right in the center of the infield, and there's windows that you could see the teams working on the cars and stuff, and then you can go up and look at all the haulers, and it was a super cool experience. I do want to figure out how to get VIP next year, though, and get down a little bit closer. But I mean, that was super cool. All the pre-race stuff, like I've never actually gotten to see all the pre-race stuff from the grandstand perspective. The only other race I went to, I was in the infield of Talladega, so we just kind of moseyed a launcher over and sat down, So, but I mean, it was a ton of fun up until, about 50 laps into the Cup race.
Yeah. So you didn't go to the truck race because you guys went and had some fun. So what did you guys wind up doing instead?
That's the night we walked the strip. So we parked at Mandalay Bay, and then we walked all the way up to Bellagio and then back. If y'all are familiar with the strip, Bellagio is about halfway up. It's right next to Caesar's Palace. So we went through like Mandalay Bay, Excalibur, New York, the Luxor, MGM, a couple other ones that I just can't remember right now. But it was a lot of fun. We got to walk up and see what all Vegas was about. All the showgirls and the gambling and the drunk people. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably Nathan's never been out there. He's a little bit young for that.
I've been to Vegas 3 times.
Of course, you have?
I stayed on the strip.
I should know that. I've seen your pictures of stuff driving the exotic cars and stuff like that. I guess
I was at the Palazzo last year.
Oh, that's cool. So you know what it's all about. I mean, I haven't had the pleasure of going out there. But we did watch from home the truck race. So what did you think about the, first race of the second round for them? Or was it the second race?
I didn't think it was that bad. Like, it was okay. I didn't get to see the first, 2/3 of the race. I saw the last third. And I was kind of disappointed at the ending because, there was a one truck crash and they threw a caution when it could have been, a photo finish. So that's, the one thing I remember from that.
Yeah, it was a good race. It was probably the best race of the weekend, at least in my opinion. And as always, trucks just did not disappoint. There was a bunch of playoff implications with that big, massive wreck that happened in turn 1 and 2, and then Sheldon Creed just clamoring Chandler Smith there. And that was probably one of the most eventful parts of the weekend. But on Saturday, you got to see a pretty decent Xfinity race, Colton. What did you think of what looked like turning into Talladega there in the midpoint of the race?
I thought the Xfinity race was the race of the weekend. You could actually see the cars sliding around quite a bit. There was a lot of passing going on, a lot of, runs being built and runs lost. It was fantastic sitting in the stands. Of course, at a mile and a half, you can't always tell what's going on. So a lot of times I wasn't watching the front few cars. I was watching this battle further back in the pack. But, man, the crowd erupted when Josh Berry took the lead. You knew exactly what was going on because you saw him chasing down for about 10, 15 laps. So, that was awesome. It was really cool to see. I didn't get to see a replay of that wreck in turn 1. I guess everyone just kind of ran out of room and kind of wadded a few cars up. So, I mean, it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I did not expect to see such a massive crash in an Xfinity race at 1.5 miles. But it wasn't the only massive crash of the weekend. Like we said, there was a couple in the truck race, and then we get to the Cup race. I know that we all really don't have much to say about the Cup race, but in regards to massive crashes, I mean, what did you see about the Joey Gase crash? Because you were there.
Nothing. It was clear off in turn 2. So, I mean, I looked up and we all saw smoke and fans were pointing, but you couldn't tell anything of what was going on. We had a terrible replay being showed. I'm sure that's the same one that was showed on TV. But you couldn't see anything. All we saw was smoke, and then kind of hung out for a little while. And then I think it was during the second stage caution. They actually came over the PA and said Joey Gase was being taken to the hospital to be further evaluated. And so that was kind of the oh shit moment. And then from there on, the next morning, we all saw the pictures of the photo sequence that went up. So that was a hard hit. I don't know if he lost his wheel and then ran it over.
Yeah, that's what I assume.
That's what I think, yeah, and it launched him into the fence. But, I mean, you see, I was making jokes about him earlier that he was already 5 seconds behind the car in front of him 2 laps into the race. So I didn't expect him to spin and hit the wall so damn hard.
Yeah, that's something interesting. I mean, we've had conversations on here about Rick Ware, just like everyone else has, but something that this package puts into play, though, with the downforce and everything, we saw it when we went to the 750 horsepower package back in, 2015 that we went to that package? We saw the corner speeds actually go up. So every time we go to a racetrack with more downforce and less horsepower, we're carrying more speeds through the corner, which makes these kinds of accidents worse on the cars. And you put someone in a death trap, which is basically what an RWR car is, no shame to them, but that's pretty much what happened. I mean, the whole wheel hub assembly just came off with what I guess was no warning because they thought they had a loose wheel, but I mean, not a loose wheel hub. I mean, when the tire popped off like that, he was probably still carrying a good momentum, like maybe 155 to 165 mile an hour, even though he was one of the slower cars on the track. So, I mean, when he backed her into the fence, that tire goes under or whatever, he basically turned himself into a ramp because the left rear at that point was gone. So his car just kind of, backed its way up the fence. And I don't think we've seen a car that airborne, even looking back at Eric Almirola's wreck, I don't think we've seen a car that airborne to where it really could have went into the fence in a while. Maybe since even the 2015 crash at Daytona with Austin Dillon. It was pretty scary, especially like you said, after we saw the pictures Monday morning. So we're all hoping he's good. All I've seen is continuing evaluation, and I know Nathan, you had said something about that in our group chat. I guess you said it was better to hear that he was continuing evaluation than, getting treatment.
Like
so you want to explain a little bit of that?
If you look at PR speak, usually when they're going to the hospital to be evaluated, it's, they're not like in a hurry. It's more like, hey, maybe he has concussion, maybe he has something, maybe he wants to get X-rays. If he's going there for treatment or immediate treatment or he's being rushed to the hospital, like, okay, that's bad. Like you notice when they took Ryan Newman to the hospital in 2020, they didn't say he was getting evaluated. They said he was getting treated for something. Right. And obviously treated was like for he's not conscious. So, I mean, like I said, it was weird. I still wish there was a replay because the car probably did run over its own tire. Like there was a clip I found a couple days ago that showed a wreck where a car just ramped over its own tire and it looked almost the exact same.
So, was it that IndyCar wreck that you shared?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's weird. Yeah. I don't know. Like I think he'll be all right, but I just think it's weird because there's no replay and all you get is pictures.
Yeah. Well, I can kind of excuse that because, like, we always make fun of them always being the last 4 cars on the track, and all the other butts of the jokes that they become because of just how they run their team.
I mean,
I can see why there wouldn't be any footage of it because usually you go ahead.
I would put footage on them because I think eventually they're going to cost somebody a championship. Like someone's going to run. They're going to run into the leader and take somebody out of a championship. I guarantee it's going to happen one day. You don't know who it is. You don't know when it's going to be, but it's going to happen. So, if I'm them, I'm putting the camera on their cars at all times.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping this is not something that happens. That would be terrible. And maybe the next gen car is what they're waiting on. We knew that was a thing with Spire Motorsports and all these other teams. Maybe they can compete more next year. Maybe not. It's going to be hard to bring a shit box when the whole series has the same parts to pull out of. So
Yeah.
maybe it'll get better. Their engine program's obviously going to be flat just like it is now. I don't know. But moving on to the winner of the race, Nathan, that's your and my favorite driver. So obviously we're a little bit biased there. But how about Denny Hamlin coming out here and winning the first race of both rounds in the playoffs so far after having pretty much abysmal winning runs at races for the first 26 races?
I don't think anything changed speed-wise. I think it's just luck. They always had this speed for the whole 26 races, and now it finally went their way a couple times. He said even then that they probably should have won every race in the first round, not just the Darlington, not just the Vegas, because they had the fastest car at Richmond. Bad pit stops put them 8 seconds back. They had a second place car at Bristol, cut a tire for just pure dumb luck. They finished 9th there when they probably could have won that. Then here they win. So I don't know. It doesn't surprise me. I think the only thing that's stopping them is stuff that they can't control. And that's why, obviously that's the thing I hate the most about the format is that stuff that they can't control is going to cost them. But
but in the same vein.
Whenever luck doesn't happen, then they're good. That's the only thing stopping them at this point.
Yeah, he was fast all night. He was definitely, if not the fastest car, he was one of them. To Nate's point, I don't know that you can really call anyone a championship favorite, so to speak. It's great to see Denny have all this speed that we've seen him have all year. He just hasn't had the luck to get into victory lane. Like Nate alluded to, all the things that kind of just little things that went wrong. So now I think he's just kind of cashing in on it. But it's really hard for me to make any assumptions towards the championship run because here in another 3 weeks, it's going to reset again. So who the hell knows what's going to happen in the future?
I would probably say,
I wasn't upset to see Denny win. That's kind of what I'm getting at here.
Yeah, so I do have to ask this because I know this was your first mile and a half event. I know that the only other racetrack you've been to is Talladega. So in the words of Kyle Busch, this was your first real race. Sadly, it was with the 550 package, but something that I always find myself doing is trying to analyze runs at these bigger racetracks, trying to see if I can predict who's going to be where based on tires and stuff, because obviously I'm not listening to the radio or the TV chatter about what's going on. So I try to be that, pit road guy or whatever, trying to figure out who's got the best strategy and stuff like that. Were you able to see any of that in the stands? Were you able to see guys make or I guess set up and make passes? Were you able to see strategies and how they were going to run out specifically with the Hendrick cars and the like?
I'm amazed that you thought there was passing because there wasn't. But the strategies, yes, I could definitely see those playing out. I saw who was stretching the green flag or the green flag runs to kind of get a little bit more fuel mileage, maybe get a little bit of an edge. But the first couple stages, everyone was just pitting at the same time within the same 3-lap window, just because they know there's going to be a caution here in the next few laps anyway. It was really that second half of the race where I saw the strategies kind of unfold. Not so much. We didn't see any tire wear, so I didn't get to see any of that. But it did almost look like Elliott was saving something at the end. Because, I kind of saw him driving through the pack, but as soon as he got into second, he kind of turned something on. And you could visibly see him catching Hamlin at a pretty quick
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah, but in the stands too, I know enough and seen enough races that I could see the runs stall out as soon as a car gets to the back bumper of the guy in front of him.
Yeah, right.
That was disappointing because you're sitting there cheering because Blaney's got to run on someone, and then he stalls out and gets freight trained by 4 guys. It's like, what?
Right.
Come on. Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, I saw that too. I knew that Elliott was going to make a late charge. I know people in the group chat I was talking to, Hamlin's got to unlock. I'm like, just wait for Elliott. He's got something because you look at the end of stage 2 or whatever stage it was where they were in the lap traffic. Hamlin almost, his pace kind of hit a brick wall at the end, and Elliott just closed up to him the second that Hamlin started to work through traffic. And that the same thing happened in the last stage. Hamlin's car got some sort of tight condition. They mentioned on the radio for the last 30 or 40 laps, and he was visibly slower than Elliott. But he ran the top for a couple corners, and that was enough to hold him off. But you look at it, it's interesting. Like, the only thing that I found fun was that the strategy mattered. The pit stops, all the execution mattered because they had to pit at the right time and they had to build a gap because Elliott's car was faster at the very, very end of the run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one guy I feel bad for in the race was Tyler Reddick. Man, that dude was hauling. I even texted you guys. I was like, man, is TV talking about this? Because he was on a freaking rail and then stalled out behind the leader, couldn't make a pass.
Right.
Yeah,
it's Kansas 2020 all over again. It sucks because these tracks, I keep saying this, but people don't believe me, especially people on Twitter. These tracks put on great races. Mile and a Half's put on great races. You just have to have the right package. And we haven't since, in my opinion, 2015. We saw plenty of good races in the Gen 6 in 2013 and 2014. COT era was great. Gen 4 era was phenomenal. I don't know what NASCAR is doing trying to get us in this bogged down, aero game that we're doing. It's probably going to carry over next season. I don't know that anyone likes that. It's just disappointing because you get a guy like Colton who's never been to a, like I said earlier, quote unquote, real race, and he's going to bring new fans. And what are they going to say for, 3 or 4 hours of guys just riding around and no passing? Like, I went to the Coke 600 this year. I appreciated parts of that race because I'm a race fan, but even I was literally snoozing in some of the lulls of that race because it was just, there was no variation in strategies. There was no passing. What little passing there was came from two guys. I saw Bubba Wallace and Daniel Suarez pass like 4 cars the whole night. And that was because, Daniel Suarez had that tire cut down and he couldn't do anything because he never got off the lead lap because there were no natural cautions so that he could get a wave around. It was pathetic. And this is what the 550 package does. So, like, if I brought new people to that race or Colton brought new people to this race, are they going to like it? And I saw a lot of people talking about how Bristol, how Richmond, and how Darlington were such good races. And even Daytona, if you go that far back, we had this great 4-stretch run. Well, what if somebody started watching in that 4-stretch run and then they watched Sunday night's race?
Right.
Are we making new fans this way? Because, the restarts were intense, but for how long? 3/4 of a lap?
Yeah, exactly. Killing any momentum that we have towards gaining new fans is exactly what that race did.
Yeah, and speaking of making new fans, I want to put you guys on something that I've been a part of for the last few months, and that is the All-American ARCA Series. So we're going to welcome on the Season 1 champion, Johnny Eckert. He's driving of number 9. What's going on, Johnny?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. Thanks for coming on. We just kind of wanted to do a little bit of a spotlight on the series, and since you were the champion, obviously coming in to this second season trying to defend yourself, how the league was kind of created and how long you've been a part of it, seeing as it's not really a new league, even though it's been rebranded.
Yeah, I was a part of the original league, but I wasn't very active in it before they split off and a couple drivers started their own thing. And from day one, because one of my buddies, DJ Weeks, is one of the admins there, he got me involved pretty much from the beginning. He wanted me to race and everything, and I really, it's a great little get up. It's quite a bunch of cool guys, that race every week and have a fun time. And after these races and stuff, we have quite a fun time running through everything that happened in the race and everything. So I've pretty much been a part of it since the beginning. And, it's a blast.
Yeah, and you pretty much dominated Season 1, but you said something about us kind of talking after the race and stuff. We had a practice race last night. It was 20 laps, and I think you, me, and like 8 other guys just stayed on Discord for probably 30 minutes or longer after the race to just kind of hang out. I mean, you were talking about your other ARCA series and truck series that you run in, as well as the race that we had, and looking forward to the season. So it's a really fun group of guys to get on with. But we also are streaming with our friend James East and Team Goon Squad every Friday at 8:30 Eastern. And I don't know, have you known James for a while? And also, how do you feel going out there and dominating in front of live followers on YouTube?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know James before this past season. I got to know him quite well through the interviews. I mean, talking to him every other week, it felt like you start to see exactly what kind of work he puts into the broadcast and stuff like that. He does a fantastic job. I mean, he does it all himself, and the quality of the broadcast is just it's really unmatched. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the broadcasting side, watching what he did throughout all these races and stuff, and then talking to him afterwards. And then there was a couple times, I think, after a couple events where broadcast ended and we spoke a little bit, and he talked about how exciting a lot of these races were, and how a lot of the fans and a lot of people that were watching were super excited about things that were going on. And some people were rooting for me, some people were rooting for someone else, and how exciting we seemed to be putting on a show, and how the fans were reacting to it. So it was pretty awesome. I know that at the beginning of the season there was an incredible turnout for Daytona, and a lot of people were tuned in and watched what was going on. And it's kind of crazy that we're in a position, it's a pretty new league, and a bunch of guys who just started racing together for the first time, having all these people tuning in to watch what we're doing is it's kind of crazy. But it's a blast. I mean, it adds a different level to the iRacing events, that's for sure.
Yeah, and unless we embarrass ourselves, usually we put on pretty good racing. I think James puts it best as we're known for a lot of green flag racing, and that's something that I'm not used to, and probably a lot of people aren't, especially when they're just running regular, hosted iRacing events, because it seems to be caution fests. So, I mean, that alone in itself, if you want something to watch that's not, I guess your normal real NASCAR stuff, we use the ARCA cars, as they call them. I think they were modeled off some of the later Nationwide cars before they went to their COT platform, with a little bit reduced horsepower. But we have long green flag runs, and I'm more of a min-pack driver. You're the guy out front. How is this green flag racing and strategy that you're running up front do based on, I guess, your other leagues and stuff like that when you're racing non-racing?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with official racing is that the races generally are fairly short, unless you're doing like an NIS race or one of those main events, one of those big events. The races are pretty short, so you don't really get to experience what if fuel, going to the end of the site, pit strategy, going. Having all these people doing different things, pit strategy wise, going to the end of the tank, or having to pit for tires and stuff. But in All American, it's there's always a strategy. You always got to be thinking about the next step, because these races go on. Some of the races last season went up to 2 hours, almost to the 2 hour cap, and there's a lot of racing that goes on throughout a race. And if there's something might not be going on at the front of the race, there might not be anything going on mid to back of the race, but there's always a battle somewhere, and it might not be obvious. And it's the same thing in NASCAR. You see a lot of races seem boring, but then when you look at it from a strategy point of view, or from okay, this guy's on new tires and he's coming. He's going to start gaining in 5 laps on the guy in front of, someone who came out of the pits later, or something like that, or earlier rather. You see the back and forth in races, and someone who runs up front at the beginning of the race isn't always the guy who's running up front at the end of races. So it's very dynamic, and it's there's always something going on. So it's never, a lot of people said that it looks easy and stuff like that, but it's not, because you can be the fastest car, but you need to have everything come together. You can't make mistakes. Pit road has to be perfect. You have to get the strategy right, and you have to be there when it matters, when it counts. And you might not be the guy up front every week, but if you're in, and you might not be the fastest, but if you're in that position when it counts, you have a chance.
Yeah, and it's really easy to blow it. I can say that I was a really good shot to finish top 3 at Pocono, and then our second green flag stop, I came out of the pits on cold tires and just looped it right there out of turn 1 and just ruined my day. So that's about how I guess real this series is. It's very cutthroat, but it's also extremely fun, and it's rare to find a group of guys in online racing from at least my perspective to that put so much into something that's not really I guess revered, not like the Coca-Cola iRacing series or anything like that. Everybody out there tries their best to put on a good show for the people watching, and I think that's why a lot of people have respected that. I know that when I've watched, because I wasn't able to race, they were getting 80 to 150 viewers at some point. So I did want to thank you for coming on tonight, but I also wanted to say a little bit about a season preview. So I know last night we were talking, you said that you might not be the guy to go out there and win 9 times this season. So are you going to be that dominant driver, or who are we looking at to be scared of that's not the number 90 car next season?
Well, let me start off by saying, I had 9 wins, but I was definitely not the guy that was fastest in most of these races. There were 1 or 2 races where I felt like that I should have absolutely won, but things on, pit strategy, critical moments mid-race that for me just kind of like, oh, you know what? I have a chance, and let me just execute from here to the end. I may have made a lot of mistakes early, or may have been out of position. I mean, Rockingham goes in my mind, comes up. I think I was running 7th the majority of the race, and then 1 pit stop mid-race, I beat my teammate off pit road. And from that moment on, it was just like straightforward. And I just, it kind of built a little bit of confidence in me. And right at the end, again, I was in position and I was able to bring it home. But, that was last season. There was a lot of people who newer to iRacing, a lot of people who were, just kind of trying to feel out their place in the league and try to get used to running in a different environment. And a lot of people gained a lot of experience in the off season, but there's also a whole bunch of drivers that are new to the league. But for me, I've of the people that were around last in season 1, I found that I find that James Silvers and the Cornerstone guys are going to be pretty quick every week. They had speed last season, but a lot of races just seemed to just fall away towards the end. James got a late win last season, USA, with 2 weeks to go, which I think was a huge boost to him. And then he came out and won the race, the Clash last week. And then,
I got something to say about that. He did just trash the leader straight over my hood, and I had to run on the outside lane. I would have won that race had he not done that.
Yeah, I don't know how I got through that wreck, but
yeah, it was insane. It was definitely a clash worthy. It was definitely a clash worthy wreck.
Yeah, I mean the whole field was gone by the time. I mean, I don't think anybody came through without damage. But there's also a couple new guys that I find. Tate, Mountain Man Motorsports, and then 2511's Elliot Henderson. Those 2 guys are going to be pretty quick every week, and we're hoping our outlaw racing outfit will be as quick as they were last season. But you don't really know where you stack up until the racing gets going. Every situation, every league is different, and you could race with the same people 3 days a week, but when you get to that 4th day, everything changes. So, it's really wide open, but I feel that I'm at least going to take the underdog role a little bit, given the experience that some of the newer guys have. In other leagues or in iRacing official. So I know Elliot ran Road to Pro, the truck series. So
Wow.
he's got a lot of experience, and I'm sure he's going to be eager to use it and try to bring home a couple dubs for his team.
Yeah, and speaking about teams, currently we have 14 different teams signed up. We have a 4-car maximum, just like the Cup Series does. And if you are interested in hard-nosed racing, you're going to find it in All-American ARCA Series. Like I said earlier, we broadcast through Team Goon Squad and James East over there at Team Goon Squad every Friday night from tomorrow on for the next, I believe it's 14 races this season at 8:30 Eastern, and it should be a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of guys. We got 62 drivers registered. That means if they show up each week, we're going to be sending home guys, and it'll be the 43 fastest in qualifying. Now, I know you guys had a lot of those same issues last year where you had like 38 to 40 people show up at some races, but that was usually the max, even though you had more than 43 registered. Are you looking for full fields this year, or are you thinking we'll see somewhere between that 35 to 38 range like we did last year?
No, I think last season, considering the league is quote unquote new. I mean, I think the first race was started about less than a month after it was founded, and the guys started to get serious about actually doing this. So considering that they had races where, drivers were, that you almost pushed that limit where people were going to be going home. It's crazy. It's really incredible. And I think the excitement around the league and the way that the culture and the atmosphere in the league is, I mean, it is a blast. These guys are just so much fun to be around. There's always someone, everybody does something different. Everybody comes from a different background, it seems like. So there's a lot of guys that, yesterday someone was doing a X-Plane or something like that, and we were watching his stream for a bit, and then someone else was playing Space Engineers or whatever, and we were just having a good time watching, talking, and everything. And I think a lot of the excitement around the league from that perspective is kind of permeated out into the iRacing community a bit, and a lot of people wanted to get in on it. So I think that there's going to be quite a few races that the fields are going to be pushing full, if not sending quite a few cars home. I think Daytona is going to be tomorrow. It's going to be crazy, but you never really know until you get into the race server.
Yeah, and we are starting our season off at Daytona tomorrow night. We'll start our practice session at 7:30, and we'll start racing at 8:30. I think James has the stream on a little bit before 8:30 so that you guys can watch qualifying as well. And he does a fantastic job, like Johnny said earlier. We'll be going to classic tracks like Talladega and Homestead as well this season, but we'll also be hitting up Nashville Super Speedway and a bunch of short tracks, and our road course is Sonoma this year. So it's a very, very variable schedule this season, and I'm looking forward to running the whole 14 races, seeing about getting Fan Fuel Motorsports up there because we've got our new race lineup this year as well. We've got a driver called Terry Freer, and he is apparently a god at super speedway races. So we'll find out tomorrow night at 8:30. Before we have you hop off here, Johnny, Nathan Colton, did you have anything to ask about the league?
I think Colton definitely had a question in the chat. If you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I did, but I mean, just from the sounds of it, we'd have to kind of further that more. But wondering how much would it be to title sponsor the league? Because that's something I'm interested in. Shit. I won't go in there and race, but I'll sure shit put a hat in the ring.
Yeah, that's definitely a question for Casey. He's the lead over there. He does a lot of the day-to-day stuff when it comes to getting registrations through and all that. So yeah, he's more the one to talk about that side of it. But I feel like they would be pretty open to it. It's a great time. A driver sponsor, whatever. There's always some fun stuff going on, and and it's a pretty new league too, so they're trying to develop their own style and trying to figure out the best way to promote themselves and the people who support them. So, I think you could be a pretty good asset to it.
Yeah,
and
the Colton Cranmore All-American ARCA League.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
That would fit you, the All-American, definitely. Yeah, thanks, Johnny, for coming on. I did want to get you on here, and Casey, he unfortunately couldn't make it, so that we could kind of get the word out about All-American ARCA. I love racing in the series. Fan Fuel Motorsports is 100% behind you guys. We are running a team there with 3 drivers. Looking for a 4th if anyone out there watching has iRacing and is is good in ARCA series because we want serious drivers, not goofs. But is there anything that you needed to plug before we let you go, Johnny?
Yeah, but I want to thank first of all, I want to thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely.
I love the league, and anything I can do to help out the league and shine a spotlight on what they're doing. I'm absolutely game for, and I'm honored that that Casey was offered for me to do it. But I want to thank my teammates, specifically my season 1 teammates, DJ Weeks, David Westergreen, and Robert Hill Jr. for all all they did last season and helped us to get a team championship in the league. And it's the league is very competitive, but it's very, very hard to do it alone. So to do anything, to be successful, you really can't do it alone. So without them, we wouldn't be anything. But also the admins, DJ, who's an admin, Kyle Hall, Casey, Harrington, for all that they do. But yeah, I'm looking forward to season 2. I'm looking forward to getting it going and hoping the racing's just as good in season 2 as it was in season 1, if not better.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. We're gonna have a new group of guys coming in, like you said. Apparently some road to pro guys, which scares me a little bit about getting my first victory in the league. But it should be good. I do want to second a shout out to Kyle Hall. He's the guy that got me into the series. He is a friend of my dad's in the real world. So that's how I got connected. That's how you got, you got on here. And I appreciate the league myself. I appreciate, you guys. I mean, you might not be an admin, but you might as well be pretty much the voice for our league so far after just one season. So thanks for coming on, and I guess we'll see you tomorrow night at 8:30 on Team Good Squad.
Absolutely. Again, thanks for having me, and and enjoy the rest of the show.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Well, that is All-American ARCA Series driver and Season 1 champion Johnny Eckert, driver the number 90 in that series for Outlaw Motorsports. I want to thank him again for coming on. Go watch us on Team Goon Squad tomorrow night. We've got 3 drivers, myself in the number 85 Fan Fuel Motorsports car, and then we've got the number 26 of Shane Gentry and a Pepsi throwback scheme for our new driver in the 46, running a throwback to Jeff Gordon in a chrome livery of one of his Pepsi 400 race cars, Terry Frater. So come join us on Team Goon Squad. We'll drop the link tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, and we'll have a good time. Moving on with the rest of the show, we'll welcome back my dad, Chad Harrington, and his pretty much lifelong best friend, Danny Cummings. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
What's happening? How come my camera ain't working?
I don't know.
I don't know why your
setting
camera
button
ain't
on
working.
there.
There.
There it is.
There he is.
go.
How you guys doing tonight?
Oh,
Pretty
I'm
good.
doing good.
Little tired after playing 18 holes a while ago, but I sucked at the last
Oh, that
3 holes.
just sucks that you're tired after playing 18 holes. Not
Yeah,
Yeah,
on a
well.
Thursday, no less. He's out there playing golf while the rest of us are working.
Yeah, but see, China's on holiday, so right now while I'm doing this, I will actually be working for the next 3 to 4 hours, getting a head start on tomorrow's artwork and everything for what I do for work. So
There you go.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
trade-offs to everything, I guess.
I took a break, Will handled everything, and then when I got back, I get to handle everything after that. See, I'm on salary. He punches the clock, so he's got to be here a certain time where I don't have to. I get the crazy hours.
Yeah.
I never
Well-
got that work. I never got that work at home during COVID. I had to work every day at work.
Yeah, same here. You can't make water from the house.
No.
Yeah.
You gotta have. Yeah, and you can't make You can't have your own chemistry lab in the garage.
Well,
Well,
you
I think
could.
that's called something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Well,
could.
you
It
wouldn't
might
want-
end
you
up
don't-
being
yeah.
a little bit Breaking Bad, though.
Yeah.
We could. Yeah, Sarah asked me that one time. Dad, can you make that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the audience knows my dad, Chad. He's been on here 2 or 3 shows. He had his own show that we did with Nathan earlier in the year, and then he was on a little bit after that when we had Colton come on as a co-host. But Danny Cummings, no one knows who you are, so let everybody know who exactly you are.
I'm just another nobody. No, I'm a Chad. Well, Chad and I, we've been hanging out since high school. We've been going to races since high school. Talladega, it's been our track we've been to. I guess about me, I live in New Freedom, Pennsylvania right now. I grew up in LaGrange, Georgia. I'm a formulation chemist. I do antimicrobial formulations. Make stuff like the 409 cleaners and all the sanitizers that people use and to get rid of this COVID thing. I've been doing that for about 26 years now. Jake's listening on the podcast. We've converted him, and Benjamin, my oldest son, we've converted them into lifelong racing fans too.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting surrounded by all his diecast right now. So, but that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, we see that.
Oh, you
Chase
don't.
Elliott banner.
Yeah, you see the Chase Elliott banner, but you don't. Hey, you should see the wall.
Oh yeah,
man.
I've seen that on Jake's Instagram,
and
he has got quite of a collection.
Oh heck, now Danny, you're gonna make me unplug my laptop and take it into the race room.
Yeah,
we'll have a whole segment.
We should have a whole show on that race room.
Right. Yeah. One of these days I'm up there. We'll have to do something like that. But yeah, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, when I'm back on happier circumstances, I'll get together and do that again.
Yeah. Obviously you've known my dad for a while. We wanted to get you guys on here for Talladega week because this is it's Dega week, man. This is Talladega. This is what tonight and this weekend is all about. Super speedway racing and all that stuff. But like my dad, you're kind of a short track guy too, and I think what we want to get into before we get into the Talladega stuff is you've moved a lot of places in the U.S. So can you let us into the races you've seen outside of Talladega and Atlanta?
Yeah, we lived in Minnesota. We watched was it Jake? 3 years in a row, 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row, the ARCA series at Elko Speedway in Elko, Minnesota. That was some really good racing. It was a 3/8 mile short track. They really put on a good show there. The ARCA series really had to kind of detune the cars to actually make a good show there. But the racing was awesome. Been to Iowa Speedway for the Xfinity series. We did that 2 years in a row. When they turned that from being I think it kind of killed Iowa when they turned that race from a night race to a day race, a summer day race. I mean, it just kind of took the luster away from that a little bit. But the 2 years we were there, it was a Brad Keselowski show. So watched Kenny Wallace's last race there. But yeah, that 7/8 mile track, it's a little bigger than Richmond, and it's just as slick. So it put on some really good racing. Now we're here in Pennsylvania. We're doing the dirt tracks, Williams Grove, Lincoln. We're watching the World Outlaws, the All-Star Sprints. We're still trying to make it to Port Royal. I think we'll do that hopefully before the season's over. But we're doing the National Open this weekend for the World Outlaws. Kyle Larson's going to be there, so he's got the Paul Silva 57. But we've been doing a lot of dirt track up here, and the dirt track up here. It rivals the South, man. They're crazy. These guys in Pennsylvania are rabid dirt track guys. and they love. I mean, it's more sprint cars here. It's more the 358s and the 410s than the late models. They do race the late models, but everybody loves the sprints up here. And first time went to Williams Grove, had to get Chad a T-shirt. So yeah,
that was awesome.
Yeah, well, next time at Williams Grove, get me a T-shirt. Shit.
All right. Yeah.
Shoot, by the time he goes back, you might need a double X.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now we're going this week. Well, we're going this weekend to Williams Grove for the National Open. So.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, 75,000 to win. So.
Oh wow, that's a big purse.
It's their third crown jewel for the World Outlaws. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, we went last year. It was a great race. So hopefully we could see. Jake will take a ton of pictures. Jake does a lot of photography now. He's got some good stuff. He's doing some good stuff with that. We went to, I guess, off the short tracks. We've been to Pocono. We went to Richmond this year. Richmond was to me that was a really good track. A lot of good slip and sliding action. And it was a good race to watch live. And TV just does not do NASCAR justice. I mean, to zoom in on the leaders or zoom in on one car, I think that's where they're losing fans. You get to the race and you can watch the race. The racing's great. You don't have to peel in on the leader every lap. You watch racing. So, and that's, I think the TV doesn't do that. Doesn't do it justice anymore, because they're just trying to talk their narrative and just kind of watch the leader, and it's all restarts. So if they could just pan out a little bit and show more than two cars in a frame, I think people, the average fan would like that a lot more.
Yeah, I think that's something that the three of us can agree with. We talked about it on here. I think Question had a Colton. Colton had a question. Before we get on to our main topic, which is going to be basically you guys talking about your Talladega stories, because you've got quite a few.
All right.
Not so much a question, but more of a comment. Like you mentioned the dirt stuff. I'm huge into the dirt stuff. I'd love to go out and see it. I mean, I could come up with 100 questions right now. But I'm super jealous because Pennsylvania Speed Weeks is something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to go to the National Open, things like that. I mean, Williams Grove is among my top 5 tracks in all disciplines to watch and to go see. So I'm pretty damn jealous of you going to see it. You'll have to send a picture or something.
Yeah, COVID killed my shot at it. We were planning on doing it last year in 2020. So, I mean, if we do it, we just all need to do it. Me, you, Alex, we just all need to go do it at the same time.
I got enough space in this house.
2023, let's put it on the books and go take care of it.
I got enough space in the house. Got enough extra rooms, beds. Got 2 extra rooms. I might have to take you up.
Yeah. I'm not going to say no to that.
We've been I haven't had the time, like the COVID, we kind of picked and choose where we went. We usually do Lincoln, Williams Grove, but we're wanting to do the whole. I think if we get all buddy together, we could do the whole speed weeks: Hagerstown, Port Royal, Baps. I mean, they circle around. I mean, they usually double book. They'll double book Williams Grove, Lincoln, Port Royal. So, but yeah, and then when Kyle Larson was here, it was packed every night. They didn't care about COVID. They were just packing a track. They didn't. Yeah. They weren't. The tracks didn't. They didn't care about the restrictions. We just went, and it was great racing. And again, everything is the speed weeks. It's fun to watch, and the actual ABC News here in Harrisburg, actually every Tuesday every Tuesday night on the late news, they do a rundown of the week's dirt track action and what happened and what's coming up. And then during speed weeks, they have recaps every night. So, I mean, they love it up here. The news even follows it.
Hell yeah.
So they follow it more than they follow NASCAR on the news. They won't even say anything about NASCAR, but they'll have a 10-minute new sports. It's all about the dirt racing that week. So
That's badass.
Yeah, so we all love racing. I know we got to get Nathan on this dirt bandwagon. We talked about that before. One of these days, we're going to get him to a dirt track, and one of these days, I'm going to go to a World of Outlaws Sprint Car Series race. Those are two things that are on my bucket list right now. I've got to get Nathan to a dirt track. What'd you say?
You've been to one.
When?
Remember when I got my Sammy Swindell wing signed?
No, I don't remember that.
But you've been.
Yeah, it doesn't count if I can't remember it.
Yeah. Yeah, Nate, we got to get you to a dirt track.
they run these.
Yeah, he'll respect that argument we had a couple weeks ago. Once he goes to one, I'm sure.
I mean,
Nate,
it's even fun.
You just need to meet me in February. I'll take you to Volusia with me and let you meet a lot of good dog drivers.
There we go.
Like Brandon Overton and Stuart Friesen and some of those, and it'll make you change your mind.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say change my mind because I got a ton of respect for it.
I'm just beer tastes better with a little dirt in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
it's
So
fun. And
Danny and Chad, this has been your guys' pilgrimage, pretty much, like you said, since high school to go up to a Dega race. You moved to Minnesota for a couple of years, but when you came back to our neck of the woods, you got me and Ben and Jake all on the trope, and I think we went to four races together, maybe three. I guess 5 of us.
Yep.
And we've had fun. So how did that all begin? And where did you guys meet, and how did you guys mesh with the NASCAR thing?
Well,
Oh, shoot. I mean, as funny as it sounds, here we are. I'm a sophomore. Danny's a senior. We're both in symphonic band, and we sit next to each other on the back row. And we started talking and everything else. Next thing you know, we're riding to school together. He stops by the house and picks me up, and we start talking about this, that, and the other. And before long, we find out that we love racing, and his dad and my dad are probably the two biggest Dale Earnhardt fans that's ever walked the face of the earth. Thus, at that point in time, next thing I know, Danny calls me and said, "Hey, you want to go to Talladega with us?" Dad got 4 tickets. And this was probably the July '88 race that Terry Labonte won. Not Terry Labonte, but that was in '89. But the July of '88 race was probably the first one we went to. And yes, it was hot as all get out.
But you had to get used to it.
The bad part was they were always back straightaway tickets for the most part when they was given to him, Danny's dad, for work. But it didn't matter. We had tickets and we were going, and we got there so early. We got up there and sat down as high as we could from where people had marked their seats from the day before when they had tickets for the ARCA race the day before, because Xfinity and trucks never raced there back in the 80s.
Yeah, and it was just from then on. It's just we would go every year, sit on the back straight. Then we decided we would. What was it? 90 we were on the back straight. 91 and 92 we decided we changed up when we started building the towers. We
May of '92.
Yep.
We watched that, and we were throwing chicken wings over the edge or chicken leg bones and everything from the Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket that we have over it on top of the concession stand below. But it was cool. That '92 race was you had a 4-car breakaway in the beginning. That had Bill Elliott, Sterling Marlin, Dale Earnhardt, and Davey Allison at the beginning. And Danny's dad said something, and I said, we need a caution. Be dadgum if caution didn't come out 5 laps later. I thought Danny's dad was gonna whoop me and throw me over there with the chicken.
Yeah, you're gonna be picking up them chicken bones here in a minute. Yeah,
That's right.
I'd have looked like some of them chicken bones off.
yeah.
And then you had 91, the rain race, and we were there for watching them. You know, it was like a 4-car. It was almost like watching the tandem or the 2000 tandem races when you had Earnhardt and Waltrip tandeming, and you had Gant and Rick Mast tandeming there at the end, and we were just it looked like that. They were just nose to tail trying to catch. You know, Earnhardt and Walter were trying to catch Gant, and it did. It looked just like one of those tandem races from the 2000s, and and then the wreck on the back straight. We almost got Kyle Petty's hood that day.
Yes, because it flew up in the grandstands area on the grassy part. Now they got a fence to where you can't get on the grassy part. And needless to say, that race that Danny's talking about was on Monday. Yeah, me and him skipped college and went back on Monday because it was in May. But what he forgot to tell you was the rain on Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
We were sitting in there, and then, you know, they got this one gate, and they got 2 big, huge grandstands. So you're filing in and trying to squeeze in two people to get out as quickly as possible. The rain's coming down as hard as it possibly could. We're in line, and Danny's dad said, "The heck with this." And you got to go across this one little spot that had a culvert underneath it to get out. And he thought he was just going to step across the water and get his shoes dirty and keep on going, and he was going to beat us. Well, he stepped up into the puddle that ended up being a hole about this big. This man turned around and looked at us, said, "Any one of y'all laugh, y'all walking the hell home."
And he meant every word.
And we were all dead laughing as it was already. I mean, but he give us that cold stare. Wham! We quit laughing. And then we go. I mean, it was crazy, but it was the funniest thing you ever seen. Because as soon as he went up to here, he turned around and pointed. Like, yep.
Man, and unfortunately,
then we had to help him get out.
Yeah, and unfortunately, he couldn't go back on Monday. And then it was, I don't know, you guys have been to Talladega enough, but back then it was all dirt. It was still all dirt, but on the back straight, and you saw pictures of in '91. If you ever look at the old races, there was enough rain that there was enough mud pits that people in Jeeps were just sinking them. I mean, up to the top. I mean, that's how much rain we got. There was 5-6 inches of rain in like an hour.
Yes.
And it was terrible. And what was bad, they had the cars on the track. They were about to take the green flag. And then it was just 1 minute it wasn't raining, and the next minute it was just everything. And then we took back. My father just bought a brand new S-Blazer. We decided we were going to go mud riding in and around Talladega. There wasn't a spot on that damn Blazer that didn't have mud. I mean, we covered it. I mean, we looked like we'd been to the Crow Hop.
Now, 91, was that the year that Mast pushed across the line, and
that was a race?
There was kind of this controversy about it because Mast wasn't on the lead lap.
Well, you can't push anyway. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he was on the lead lap or not. You couldn't push a car out of gas that wasn't under power on the lead lap at all.
That was it. He was
Yeah. It doesn't matter. You could push him all you wanted up to the white flag, but on the white flag lap you couldn't push him. Well, he wasn't pushing him, but he was sure enough banging him. He was off and on him enough. So, and I think also on the end of that race when Darrell Waltrip went to protest, and they told Darrell Waltrip, they said, "Hey, you know, your spoiler's low. You go you really want to protest this?"
Yeah.
That was was that the race where Kyle Petty broke his leg? Maybe am I remembering that right?
Yeah, that was.
Because I remember seeing videos of that.
Yeah, that was the Ernie Irvan. That was when he was a little bit out of control.
Swerving Irvan. Yeah.
Yeah. After that race, though, he settled down. He became quite the restrictor plate driver after that race. Something turned in him, and I think the drivers there before the next restrictor plate race kind of had a come to Jesus meeting with him, but he settled down. He won the next he won the 93, the 92 Die Hard, the 93 Winston. So I mean, he won the next two races. So so he settled down pretty well. It didn't hurt he had that Morgan McClure power either.
Yeah.
Not at all. They had that cross exhaust too, so the engine even sounded different at that era. I remember everyone always talks about, I think those four races specifically, when they were coming out with the cross exhaust, and how different it sounded. Did it sound visibly or audibly different from the track?
Yes.
That actually didn't happen until Sterling Marlin in 95 with the Monte Carlo. But yes, it was with Morgan McClure, and yes, it sounded completely different in the stands. And I don't know if anybody watches the Scene Vault podcast, but you can go back and listen to Mr. McClure, his three things, and he will tell you that they actually had it to where they had that part built for them and had 1 year exclusivity before they could sell it to anybody else, which was definitely dynamic. But the guy that was building the engines, Runt Pentman, he did it all for Ernie Irvan too, so that only added to the power when Sterling started driving for him. I mean, the man behind the power right there was that guy, Runt Pittman, with the engines. And whether it didn't sound a little different back in 91, 92, 93 when Ernie was driving it, the show wasn't too many people that could keep up with it.
No.
Yeah. Go ahead, Danny.
No, that's fine. I was just gonna say, like, Ernie, that they had good cars. It wound up. It was, I mean, almost in the 95. That X pipe almost made it sound like that engine had a flat plane crank. Almost sounded like these flat plane crank GT 500 Mustangs.
That'd be interesting. I wish I could have seen some of the stuff that you guys saw on track, but I know personally, knowing some of the stories from both of you guys, but this one I kind of heard from my dad a lot, and I wanted you, Danny, to kind of confirm whether or not this has happened. And since the statute of limitations is out on it, apparently the race wasn't only at the track when you guys went to Talladega. Apparently you guys had tried to beat each other's times going to and from the racetrack. Is that true?
Every year. And then try to beat our times getting out of the track too. How fast could we get out? How could we manipulate traffic? How could we find different ways out? How fast could we get down I-20, getting to the track, to that East of Boga exit? Because way back then, it was, we would try to get there early enough. You could run 100 plus down 20, and all the cops are at the East of Boga exit. They're not going to stop you. There's nobody out there.
Yeah.
And back then we got there early enough that it would never back up until maybe about a half mile before not even a half mile before you got to get off the East Boga exit. So it was just seeing just how you could get there. And then, so it was, it was more the Blazer, and we did my Camaro a couple times.
Your mom's Caprice.
That Caprice, man. That Caprice was like Cadillac floating down the damn interstate with that.
The Joker had the coldest AC I'd ever been in. I mean, my nose and my ears felt like they had frost hanging off of them.
You couldn't wait to get out of that car back. You were in a July race. You couldn't wait to get back in that thing.
Yeah. So
431 changed when they did the 4-lane all the way through and took out the first part of the curvy roads, though. It wasn't as fun once they put that in.
Yeah.
the first part of the curvy parts was it's almost like the real technical part of an F1 track, because you had to be on it to be hauling butt down through there. It almost like you did not want to have any cars coming from west coming east, because you knew that you were hammered down east to west, and you would be going across lines and clipping the grass on the other side, on the inside corners back to the other and everything. But goodness gracious, when they took that first part out, it changed the whole dynamics of, can we get there faster? Heck, you got there 15 minutes faster just because you wasn't going through those curves, but it wasn't as fun.
Yeah. And to put it in perspective, coming from LaGrange to go up there, we always went the back roads through Roanoke up 431, like they're talking about, and through the Talladega National Forest. So it wasn't like, especially until you got to I-20, you guys were not going through some pretty tight curves and stuff. So with a little bit less safety standards from the cars from the 80s and 90s. I don't know how
And
you guys.
we didn't wear seat belts back then either.
Yeah, we weren't required.
Yeah, we weren't required to wear our seat belts back then either. So,
man, well, I mean, you guys, like I said, you did some crazy stuff off the track. We talked about the mud incident with Danny's dad. You guys got to see races there, from 92, like you said, all the way. So you've seen multiple generations of cars and stuff.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to steer back into the Talladega racing aspect of it. I mean, what were some of your memories from going to these events, race specifically, that stood out, whether they were, wrecks or good races or whatever? I mean, when you think of Talladega and you look back on all the races that you guys have been to, which ones were some of your favorites, and which ones were some where you just walked out, confused about a certain lap or a certain caution?
Well, the Jimmy Horton thing was in '93 was a wild wreck. I look up, Chad looks up, Chad looks at me and goes, "I think he just went out of the track." That was crazy. I mean, and then you'd never think a car was going to go out of the track.
Not there.
And he went out. We're like, Chad's like, he went out. I think he went out. I was like, yeah. But it was crazy. That was one of the crazier things I've seen.
And Alex, before you follow, where we sat in where Danny bought the tickets for us all to go, me, you, and his Jake and Ben, that's about where we saw Jimmy Horton take off over turn one wall. So if that gives you an indication of how far away it was, and yet we seen him go over the wall, it's like, and he disappeared.
Yeah.
That's where we were sitting when we saw it. So it was almost like watching a micro machine get thumped by a bumblebee, and it's like, he gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, for those watching and or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts later, we usually sat when we went when Danny was still living down here in the Lincoln Tower, which is basically the entrance of pit road. So the perspective he's talking about is probably what 3/4 to a mile away from turn one and turn two where the car went out.
That would probably And then
I would say.
And another wild one was, was when it wasn't a spectacular wreck, but it was right in front of us when Neil Bonnet hit the fence in '93. In July '93.
The 31 car, right?
He was in the mom and pop's car.
Because he went right up to the booth after that.
Yeah. It was kind of one of those, everybody kind of went, oh boy. Hope he's, he'd already had the one wreck, and you'd always hope he was going to be okay. And it wasn't like, the safety of today. Somebody got in a wreck like that against the fence, it was always, oh, we hope he gets out. Not like, oh, well, yeah, there he is. So, and it took that was July '93, and it was I think that was one of the hottest races we'd ever been to. And it took them, over 2 hours to fix that fence.
Yeah, and both of us actually had sun poisoning and stayed out of summer school for about 3 days. I mean, it drained us so severely badly. It was incredible.
The girls down in front didn't mind it too much. They were putting on a good show for those.
Yeah,
boards.
I mean that definitely was a plus. The teeny bitty teeny bikinis.
Yep.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, it's Talladega. You've all heard the rumors, so.
Oh, I can.
All I can
There's
say
some
is
other
it's a rowdy
things.
crowd.
There's some other things we can talk about Talladega that we saw, but I don't know if that's for this kind of pod. I don't know what people listen to this podcast. So.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm sure they've heard worse. One of the things about Talladega is just how crazy the fans are. I mean, now we've got the Boulevard. I'm not sure did they really have Boulevard, parties and stuff like that in the 90s and stuff before the peak of NASCAR?
It was a little different because there was nothing for camping over on the other side of the road from the racetrack between I-20 and there.
Yeah,
that came later. But most of the big time stuff actually did party was over behind turn 1 campgrounds and on the back straightaway campgrounds closest to the airport.
I mean, it's almost 30 years gone from that time. Did you guys get into any of that stuff, or were you guys just going straight up there and straight home as fast as you could?
We kind of, I don't know. We walked around it. We took it in. How about that? We don't know if we partaked a lot of it, but we were around it.
And there was a few times that we would stop at Talladega Short Track on the way back because, I mean, we were more on the lines at that point to see as much racing as possible, more than it was the craziness of some of those parties, because you had to really be there until it got really dark and really late. And we never did stay there because we'd have to get back up for driving back and forth. We didn't stay there. So you got an hour and 15-minute ride every time.
And then another good race that I don't know, Chad agrees with this, but the 92 IROC race.
Best one yet.
Best IROC race I ever seen. I mean,
4 wide out of turn 4.
I think it was 5. When Davey Allison takes it low and just goes, he just had the draft, and it was one of those races that you just couldn't lead because it was just so much slingshot.
I'm going to give Smith TV a shout out for his YouTube channel. He actually has that race on his YouTube channel. Check it out.
Yeah. And it's an excellent, one of the best. I think it's even better. It's better than Earnhardt IROC race at Michigan.
Oh, wow.
I would agree with that. Earnhardt at Michigan probably falls second to that race.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the ones that people clamor about, at least in the Twitter world, because I think a couple of months ago we saw that 8 or 9 lap finish of that Michigan race go viral. That was actually the first time I saw that race. I don't know. Maybe it's because IROC finished in 2007? Maybe a little bit later. Was it 2004?
Oh, 6.
6 or 7.
7, yeah.
Yeah.
But even just before that, it started to just become NASCAR 2.0. You got a lot of the open wheel guys out of it.
Yeah.
A lot of the dirt guys kind of fell out of it. So it was just a lot of NASCAR guys fighting the last couple of years.
Yeah, it kind of got where when you got the kart and IRL did that, and then they came back, and then it's just I think the dates just never meshed for those guys too. So.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's something that we're kind of getting back with SRX, which is, I think, something that everybody else has. But I mean,
yeah, I like that series this summer. That was a good. That was, and they knew exactly what they were doing. It wasn't, it's entertainment, and they did what they had to do, but it was good racing too.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking about good races, I mean, we focused on the 90s and stuff. I don't remember quite when you guys moved away from Georgia to go up to Minnesota. But let's talk about some of the 2000s races, even though that, I wasn't going to these races at this point. I don't know. I know my dad was in the pits for a couple of ones in the early 2000s. And Danny, I'm not sure if you were still here in Minnesota.
Yeah, really the last one I really went to was the one Chad and I went, was Earnhardt's last finish in 2000. And after that, I kind of had other things coming up and this and that, and it just never fell right for me. And I moved to Minnesota in 07 again. But yeah, I think that watching that, and Chad actually helped us, and we had press passes that day, so
Yeah.
we were in the pits. I was taking pictures. I actually got a lot of really good pictures. Chad has a lot of really good pictures. Met a lot of people. Watched the Redskins game on Dale Jr.'s pit box.
That's such a Dale Jr. thing. Dude, oh my God.
They were radioing him the score of the Redskins game during the race. And then I thought on that last restart, I was packing up. I'm like, yeah, this, it's going to be over. It's going to be probably Junior or, Gordon or somebody winning. And then, then you start watching Earnhardt coming. And I went and jumped on they had just put in a pedestrian walk bridge. And I jumped up on that to watch and take pictures, and it was a sight to see. And if Chad never got those tickets, had never been where it was at, and it was great. Even standing there to see Victory Lane. I think you even got in Victory Lane, didn't you, Chad?
Yep, I was in Victory Lane for Earnhardt's last win. I got the $1 million bucks. I know I handed Danny a fistful of them too. I brought them home and give them to some of the nice Earnhardt fans, and I know he made sure his dad got one of them. But it was cool that I actually have pictures in Victory Lane from that one race. And granted, it's probably in my top fives of all of them, but, me and Danny's only been going since 88 together. I've been going to Talladega since 78. So I've seen some pretty awesome races by myself over there when my mom and dad used to take me too. So, but I've seen some good ones just by going by myself or in the press pass stuff. I mean, to me, I've got to witness it from so many different points: back straightaway, front straightaway, tower, pitch, garage. It makes it hard to really find out which one of those races were your favorite. But I can go all the way back to, I've seen the cars in the late 70s before they downsized. Then they went to the Gen 4, and then they went to the COT, and then they went to the Gen 6, and I've got to see them all. So it's really cool that I've been able to do that. But I was there for Davey Allison's first win after his daddy took down the fence in '87, and that was a 4-hour fence delay.
Yep.
That was real cool. And I mean, I got to see Elliott make up a lap and a half in '85 in May.
Yeah, we were there together, but not together. I was
right.
there
You
too.
was on the front straightaway, and I was on the back.
Yeah, because.
But the thing was, his car never sounded like everybody else. His car would come by, he was full throttle, but his car would come by, and it was like a whisper. Everybody else was screaming. And come to find out later on in '85, they had bought up so many of the exact blocks that they needed to where the other 4 teams were having to use the alternate block because they couldn't get none of the blocks that the Elliots were using and building motors from. But, wow. I mean, one of my favorite races out of all time, it was the tandem race that me and Alex went to in April of, 11, that they had the 8-wide finish,
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
that tandem racing was cool as all get out. I mean, the sheer speed you could see the cars have reminded me what I got to see before the restrictor plates got on there. It was almost like deja vu for speed for me, but it had a whole different element, the fact that you had to rely on somebody else to push you. But that whole race was completely different and unique to its own, and I still wish we had that, but that ain't what all the other fans wanted. So, NASCAR does this and throws the rule book up in the air and changes everything to piss them off. We know that.
Yeah.
But back then, heck, they could adjust their spoilers. If the car was too loose, they'd go and raise the spoiler. They didn't have them fixed like they do now at a certain angle. If you was man enough, you'd lay that joker down like Bill Elliott did in 1985, and where it only had 10 degrees.
Yep. And that's kind of what made the racing better then too. Is sure they stuck the restrictor plates on there, but run a 20-degree spoiler. If you want to run a 15-degree spoiler, then you had to. It was getting the end of a run. Tires were bad. Tires got wore. They were lifting. And it would separate the field. You wouldn't have horrible pack crashes. And it was who could keep up. And there's usually 4, 5, 8 cars that usually hit it, and they would be the pack.
And those would be tight at the beginning and loose at the end, but they would still handle because you could drive a dump truck around Talladega at 200 miles an hour, according to Kyle Petty. But the whole difference is when their rear end got light, they actually had enough spoiler to where they felt comfortable and they could run wide open or lift just a little bit and maybe burp it in the corner and get back on it. Most of these guys today, there's probably 3 drivers that have got cojones big enough to do that. I'm not even going to mention the 3 that I know that can, but there's only 3 in the field that can do that.
And
y'all could probably come out and name each one of them.
Yeah. So I wanted to go back. I think you were going to say something about it, Danny, but seeing as you guys saw pre-restrictor plate races, I know we're out of restrictor plates now, but they're essentially the same pack racing and stuff, and we'll get into that in a little bit. I did want to ask that specific race where Elliott came from 2 laps down to win. What was the fan experience like then? Was everybody in astonishment? I mean, was there confusion? Because there was only, I think, 6 or 8 drivers on the scoring pylon at that time. And from then until, the races that we went to in the early 2010s, I mean, what was the difference that you felt at the racetrack between, those seldom loose packs where you had 2 or 3 cars running and then the tight packs of now?
Well, it's the same thing I was talking about earlier. You go to the race, you're just not watching that first pack. You're watching everybody else. The TV's going to show you the first pack. And a lot of people there, I can say this, back in 85, my father, I was watching it. He kind of lost contact with Elliott and how he was doing. I was watching it and making up laps. And I think most of the fans, I mean, when you're there, pretty much, if you're a true fan, you're going to keep up with it.
Absolutely.
So, and most of the people around us were keeping up with it, where we were sitting.
Yeah,
At that time,
I will agree.
But you can tell the people that are the fans and the people who are there that just got tickets, because when all that happened and they were Elliott fans and Elliott came on pit road and all that, the stand, you could tell the fair weather fans, they just clear out and go home. And it was the same way at Richmond. When we were at Richmond, when it got about halfway through the race and our section half cleared out, we're like, well, where is everybody going? This is a great race.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. Specifically, I know you said that at the top of the show. It was a fantastic race.
Yeah, Richmond was a fantastic race. It was really good. It got. I didn't agree with the way they did the stages, but it was a good race. But again, get back to the 85. Yeah, people kept up with it, and I kept my eyes on Elliott because I wanted to see how he was coming back. You watch the leaders, you watch him, you were, God, he's, and you could just see it, like when we go to the races, we don't have stopwatches, but we have it in our head. We know just about how fast someone's going, how much faster one pack's going than another, and you're like, damn.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That was always fun going, especially like, going with other NASCAR fans, which is something that, other than, obviously my dad and now Myra, like I've never really gotten to experience going with a group of people like that, as I did with you and your boys when we were going. It was really awesome to be able to, converse with the people around you about what's going to happen and why, and you kind of get, a little bit flustered at each other because this is happening and you said it would and it didn't happen and that kind of other stuff.
And Todd Gilliland still owes me $3.
Who does?
What?
Todd Gilliland. You're gonna have to explain that because the only people that understand that are me and my dad.
I had a question, but now I've got a new one. Okay, so go ahead.
No, we were at the truck race. It was what, 2018 truck race? Huh? Yeah, 2018 truck race. Yeah. And we all had a little dollar bet on who was going to win, and I forget who was. Yeah, we forget who everybody had, but the truck I had got wrecked by Todd Gilliland. The truck I had wrecked Todd Gilliland. Well, then David Gilliland come back out on the next restart and wrecked him.
And I remember that.
I remember that.
Dumped
So
him, yeah.
there goes my $2. So they all owe me. And to this day, I keep, every time I watch a truck race, I tell Jake, I said, "Oh, he blows up. Oh, he runs out of gas."
Yeah.
What was that one race? It was Texas. I said, "Jake, I hope he runs out of gas." And damn, he didn't run out of gas. And we were at Dover a couple years ago. Yeah, that's another racetrack we've been to. We've been to Dover a couple. We've been 3 times to Dover. And Jake was getting an autograph from Todd Gilliland. He goes, you owe my dad $3. He really hates you. Todd Gilliland told Jake, "I don't care."
Yeah.
What? It's kind of like what? Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jake's not afraid to speak his mind about
No,
drivers.
he
There was an incident where we talked about a McDonald's menu item in the garage in Atlanta, and he got a snark look from Jamie McMurray. So,
and then we were at what race were we? Yeah, we were at Williams Grove over the summer, and Donnie Schatz was riding around on a little moped, just checking the track prep, and we were up against the fence in turn 1 and 2 where he was at, and Jake yells out at him, "Nice clown bike, Donnie."
oh, Jesus Christ!
Jake and I would get along.
He's not got
man.
baby face anymore. He's gonna get a shiner one of these days.
Nah,
Donnie Schatz laughed with him on it. So
yeah. Jake's my people. He and I would get along. We do the same shit. Yeah.
So context to what I was talking about, we usually got in the infield, and then at AMS there's a blocked off section where you can walk through, but not if there's drivers coming, security stop you, and the drivers will come from the lot to the garage in practice, and that space is usually packed with fans. Which is one of the reasons I'm disappointed about practice moving forward, but that's a different argument for a different day. And so he's coming over here, and he's on the other fence line signing autographs. And so instead of saying, "Hey, Jamie, can you come sign something?" Jake just says, "Hey, McFlurry." And it was he like locked eyes with him, and he was so mad. And he just shook his head. No one just kept walking. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen.
He said something back to Jake, didn't he?
Oh, he did.
Oh, he did. But yeah, that was Jake gives no fucks. How about that?
Yeah. Jake's my people. So Jake, pick a race next year that you want to go to, we'll go.
Yeah, McMurray called him a spoiled little brat.
Oh wow.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. So earlier this season on Fan Fuel, I said something about just treating the drivers like they're human and being nice to them. Yeah, Jake is kind of antithesis of that. So before we move on to everybody else's questions,
he treats the drivers nice. He just has Jake just has his side of his little side that he likes who he likes. How about that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I did want to get in before. I know Colton and Nathan have a lot of questions. I've been kind of hijacking everything so far, but I did want to ask, to you guys both, Danny and of course Chad, my dad. How was it having the three of us growing up and getting us into racing and being able to take us all for those couple of years to those races together and just becoming like a little unit almost. Did we lose both of you?
No, I'm good. I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. To me, it wasn't it didn't seem like it was that big of a deal, being that we introduced you to race cars basically, by your first birthday. And again, I know if anybody's not heard the first thing, I mean, my son's first word was not mama, and it wasn't daddy. It was race car. No joke, race car.
Wow.
And when he was born, for his first Christmas, he got a number 4 Sterling Marlin car, thanks to his first name. And he's had that ever since. But every Sunday, we had racing on, and anytime we could find racing on TV, we had it. And then I guess the easiest way to get a kid hooked was the fact that when the PlayStation came out, or we had Nintendo, we got the racing games, we got the NASCAR versions, and that's pretty much where Alex got it. And then he started out adding back with the I think he first got the ATV and then the motocross, and then he stepped into the F1 and stuff like that. But it just grew based on the video games. But had he not liked racing because it was on all the time and sat down and watched it with me, maybe it would have been harder to do it that way. I don't know what it would take to get a kid to do it now, but you can influence them a lot by, hey, come sit down and watch a race with me. Yeah, we might fall asleep on the couch while we're watching it, but it's better than, doing something and they find out that they don't like it, and it's definitely quality time that you're spending with the kids.
Yeah, it's the same with us. Jake, Ben was first. You and Alex, you and Ben are right at the same age. And it was doing the same thing with that, video games, watching on TV, going, trying to, taking him to some races. We did the truck race a couple times at Atlanta. And so, yeah, it's that. And I'm looking at all the video games they've got sitting up right here. Road to Knoxville, Thunder 2002, Dirt to Daytona, Thunder 2004, 2005, Total Team Control, 8, 9, 11, 14. So, it's all the video games. And then I think Ben did like you, Alex. He did the NASCAR, and he watches NASCAR a lot, and he likes to go to the races, but he's ventured in, and now Jake too. Jake's more of an open wheel. He likes the open wheel IndyCar. But Ben, he's ventured into the F1. He loves watching that every week now. And if I could get him to COTA or get him, one of these days, get him to an F1 race, it would be just the icing on the cake for him. So it's just not that they watch NASCAR. They watch all forms of racing. We have flow racing. I'm telling you, Jake has gotten into he never was a really big fan of the late model dirt, but once we got up here and started going to sprints, he really jumped into the sprints. Jake he just loved the sprint cars. and I think it's not just because you're seeing Larson and all some of the NASCAR drivers run these sprint cars. I think it's the action, because these sprint.
Yeah.
I mean, you're running half mile Williams Grove. You're running a 16-second lap, and it's a pretty flat track, pretty tight corners, long straights. It looks like a Martinsville. So, and then we go to Lincoln, and Lincoln's a lot like Sonoa, just with red clay. So,
well, I will say this: the World of Outlaws and that, Tony Stewart's All-Star Circuit of Champions, when they go to town, to any one of these places that he's talked about in Pennsylvania, they are the underdogs. I mean,
yeah.
The PA Posse, the guys that race there weekly, Dietrich, Freddie Raymer, all Donnie Kreitz, all of those guys, they are so much more on the level of a national touring series than anybody else. And I know I've got feeds that I can watch a lot of these races, and I watch Williams Grove pretty much every Friday night if I can. And they put on some awesome racing with their local stuff. That's just Pennsylvania Posse. They have got the greatest sprint car following, other than the Midwest in Indiana and that sort of place, than anywhere else. And I hate to say it, but we're super late model guys, because that's pretty much all we run around here, and we don't have access to those awesome deals like Danny and them do now in Pennsylvania, because that is the Pennsylvania Posse lane, and sprints are big time up there. You go further out west, it may not be super late models or sprints. It's going to be the IMCA modified and those street stocks. That's the big deal. It just depends on where you are. Now, if I could have been in Pennsylvania and been lucky enough to be watching the Pennsylvania Posse all my life, oh my goodness, that would have been awesome. I ain't gonna lie, that would have been the top of the line spot for me. I sort of envy him a little bit, because he's up there in that neck of the woods, because he's got some of the greatest racetracks in the country.
Yeah, it's greater. There's tons. We could go to like we were talking about the other day. We were talking about Lernerville, and that's about a 3-hour drive for us, but it's something to go do. And we need to go Hagerstown, but I think this year with if everything gets a little less restricted, we'll do more of those Speed Week races. Actually, Lincoln from my house is only like 20 minutes. So
wow.
And then Williams Grove is only like 45 minutes, just outside of Harrisburg. So it's not that.
Y'all are within arm's reach of these racetracks. I know me and my dad, we've driven far further than we probably should have to some of these races, three plus hours. But kind of swinging back into the NASCAR thing, I know we've kind of just ebbed and flowed tonight. But Colton had something to ask you guys, because not only have you seen some golden era stuff of short track racing and what have you, you obviously experienced different series come and go through television, but he wanted to focus on one of his favorite past NASCAR drivers.
Yeah, so my all-time favorite driver, and I tell everyone this since I was a little kid, is Davey Allison. I wish I would have been born anything before 96, 94, so I could see him race. But, you mentioned that you were there at his first race. What was it like seeing him win and seeing him race at Talladega for those few years that he did?
He got more cheers than Dale Earnhardt, I'll tell you that. They loved him. And he was a hell of a restrictor plate driver. He was a hell of a driver, period. Again, talking about that 92 IROC race, and he came from nowhere and he just blitzed them. 5 wide coming out of turn 4 to get the lead. He had a natural gift. I think it was just with Robert Yates' power, him driving that Robert Yates car and that Robert Yates power, you knew he was going to be up front all day. anywhere he went. If he's either going to be up front or he's going to be in a wreck. So that's how it was. But he was a great, to me. I think if situation was turned, I don't think Earnhardt would get 7 championships. I think Davey Allison would have had 3 or 4. So
I'm in the same boat. I don't think Gordon would have 93 wins either.
I don't either. He was that good. To me, he was that good. I mean, I've got a lot. Chad can tell you, I like Davey. I had some memorabilia, but I always like that Robert Yates car too. So
yeah.
Well,
On the topic of, go ahead.
The biggest thing about Davey is he was always calm. You couldn't tell exactly what he was really doing behind the wheel until he did it. You know, he challenged Bill Elliott before Bill Elliott had his issues in that 1987 race. He passed him multiple times. And it looked like he could at wheel at any point in time for his first win and do it then. And Danny is 100% correct. I mean, Talladega was 100% Davey Allison, Alabama gang, 100%. I mean, nobody was going to get any louder cheers than him. Earnhardt might have been second, but there was nobody going to outplay Davey at that home track.
Nope.
And the most solemn moment would definitely be before the July 93 race after he lost his life. That was the quietest I have ever heard a racetrack too at a NASCAR event. It is very odd, to say the least, that somebody earned that much respect, but knowing how he came up and his daddy made him build everything, and Donnie, his uncle, helped him every possibility he could, nobody really knew how good Davey was, even though he could showcase it on the track. And he only got 19 wins to show for it. But there was so many other opportunities that were missed opportunities for him that he could have easily had 25 in that same time frame as 19. And yes, after losing that title in 92, 93 was probably going to be his.
Yeah.
But he was just as good on a short track as a super speedway. He was fearless, but he would calculate so many things differently. And then all of a sudden he would pounce just like a lion behind the weeds. You know, if he was there, he was going to take his shot. He was that good.
Yeah. Yeah, I love hearing that. Nate, I know you got a question, so go ahead.
Yeah, on the topic of drivers from that time, I wasn't around for Dale Earnhardt at the time when he dominated Talladega, so I hear a lot of people say that he was ahead of his time in terms of knowing how to do things that are common practice today, like side drafting, all that stuff that you see on the TV every time you turn it on now. But, back then, like, was the same view around, were people saying that he's ahead of his time, or did no one know that he was kind of set the standard for those types of racing?
Well, I think you could watch him, and Chad and I, when we watched him and we talked about it back then, we knew that it wasn't, he can see the air. No, he just knew how the air was played. He figured it out. Right. He was the first really one to figure it out. And one thing he really figured out was getting to the outside of somebody and using the car and the wall getting into turn one. And he could use that, and I just don't think it was, it's not seeing the air, but he did figure out. And I think it also comes from back when there weren't restrictor plates and doing slingshots and trying to get runs on cars to do that. So I don't know, Chad, you want to?
To be honest, I think it's one of those you could see air, because if you look at them now, look how tight the window nets are put up. They are so solid, right? There was a looseness on certain people's cars
You do me a favor.
on those window nets, they were still tight, but they were loose. And depending on where you were and the way the air was coming in, you could watch that window net vibrate. And if you'll go back and watch in-car cameras, you'll see what I'm talking about. Therefore, you're changing the air dynamics. So, yeah, he could see the air because out of his left side, he could watch it or it would stop, depending on where they were at. And sometimes I would say, depending on how they had some of those vents coming in and on to them for cooling them off in July, of course, and May was still hot too, but it could be that you could feel a different pulse from that air coming in the car based on those hoses. It was a dynamic that he learned, and he knew when to go when he felt that certain air shift. But I don't think he could see the air per se. I knew that I think he could feel the air difference, and especially the way it would whistle through the car by that driver's side window and the window net.
Yeah,
Something he learned to do that nobody else did. Small details.
Also didn't help that. Also didn't hurt that he had a great engine and good, you know.
Yeah.
And they were ahead of their time building sleek cars too. So
yeah, I just think it's interesting because now you got guys like Hamlin saying that their spotter meets with aerodynamicists before every super speedway race to say, you know, where do we want to put our car? We don't want to be in this place in the pack because it's going to upset the balance. And you hear stories like that, and it's like they didn't have any of that stuff. They just did it on their own. It was almost like, you know, they set trends that were little did they know at the time. Now it's, you know, everyone's trying to mimic that thing.
Right. And even more interesting, they didn't even have spotters back then, right? So the spotter position was around, but it was more like, hey, there's a wreck in turn 4.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Right.
a tool like we use it today. So
it was not a driving coach tool. You're correct. Compared to, hey, there's a spin in turn 1, or hey, there's a spin in turn 4. Go high, go low, go high, whatever, you know.
yeah,
You're right. The dynamics of the spotter and his job have changed, just like technology, to ascend that team. But spotters have ruined racing because of that.
yeah.
You know why? Because at the same point in time, now that race receivers are involved, and yes, they do still have that hooked up in those cars as well. Why can NASCAR not just talk to them and when they have caution and tell them where it's at, get rid of the spotters? I don't think they're needed anymore because of the race receiver technology and the one-way communication from the tower. And I say that because I've done the job. You know, if you're too close to the wreck, yeah, you hear caution, you're not going to be able to react to get out of it anyway. But at the same time, you also don't need to know, hey, you're clear coming off of turn 2 at Richmond, or hey, you still got somebody to the outside. If you can't hear them to the outside because they're that close to you, should you really be driving that race car? I mean, that's how you learned how to drive when you was driving in whatever street stock all the way to where it got you in NASCAR, right? You had to hear. Most of the time, you didn't have a spotter.
Yeah, and I would say that that's probably why they drove with a little more respect back then, because they didn't have somebody acting as their eyes, so they couldn't take the liberties they do now, it seems like, with the blocking.
Yeah, it's also with the blocking. If the spotter is basically driving the car, and you know what happens if that driver is that split second off? You know, does he and he tells him go high, and then get in that line, and now the spotter's driving the car, and if the driver doesn't do it exactly to the second or to the split second, there's the wreck. He's not looking, he's just reacting. The spotter says go, so, and if he's that split second off, there's the big wreck too. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's something that definitely, like we had said, it's kind of dynamically grown into another tool, and I don't think that we could get away from it now. I see it's a valid point that you guys are making, I'm going to have to say that spotters have probably made some of the racing better until this 550 package, in my opinion, because we've had the ability to have the safety net, especially at plate tracks, to have better races and better runs because guys can move around better because they have an eye in the back of their head or whatever where they didn't. But definitely TJ Majors, being the greatest spotter of all time, ruined the Fall Kansas race last year. I mean, it to a point. I can agree with you guys where it might not matter on the smaller racetracks.
I think the thing with them is that I don't like the driver coaching aspect of it. I've always thought that if one driver is doing something better than the other, then the drivers in the car should figure that out themselves. They shouldn't be told, "Hey, this is where this guy is running. You need to do this. You need to do that." And it kind of, like you said, it's a tool. Like it takes away what the driver has to do himself.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think everything you guys said nailed it on the head. And it wasn't even an opinion that I had before this episode. And then you guys said it. I was like, oh, shit. That makes sense.
You come to Fan Fuel for hot topics, and I don't necessarily agree that we need to get rid of them, but that definitely puts into perspective something that I've never thought about.
Yeah. I mean, I've grown up in the era where spotters are what they are today. And so, to hear those stories, like, oh, shit, that does really make sense. Like, if you can't tell that someone's on your outside, probably shouldn't be driving a race car,
Yeah.
Next time I see the DBC guys at the racetrack, I'm gonna tell them that my dad's got beef with them.
Just give them the bird. That's it.
I talked to Freddie Kraft at Richmond.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're really nice guys. I think I got to talk to all three of them in Atlanta, and it was good. I mean, they serve their purpose though. Like I respect the job, and I'd love to be able to do it because I feel like analytical fans like us could do it well compared to maybe some of the guys in the back of the pack that don't have very good spotters right now. But unless Colton or Nathan has any more questions, or Danny or Chad, you have any questions for us, we'll go ahead and move on.
I've got a million questions, but they can all wait.
Okay. All right. Nobody else has any questions?
What we're going to next?
Well, we're going to go ahead and move into what I'm calling a send-off of the Gen 6 era. So,
good.
This plate package is not what we've had the past couple of years. It is producing similar racing at Daytona, so I'm sure we'll see a hell of a race this weekend at Talladega. But with next-gen testing, we've heard a lot of things like side drafting being gone, steering not making sense, and a whole new era coming in, obviously, with the next-gen car. So I kind of want to reminisce on what we've seen since 2013. So I'm going to kind of do a rapid-fire question like we usually do for our Woke with Joke segment. We'll start below me with Chad, move to Danny, then go up to Nathan, Colton, and then myself. And let's go ahead. We got 3 or 4 simple questions out of the Gen 6 era up until now, August 2021, all the way back to February of 2013. What is your favorite moment in the Gen 6 restrictor plate era?
I would say the first Gen 6 moment is when they took the restrictor plate off. Even though it was a tapered spacer, put that big spoiler on the back a couple of years ago. I know Chase Elliott won the race, but the fact that those jokers sounded so much more like the cars in the 70s and 80s at that point because they weren't so restricted. And the fact that they made pull-ups and they were fast and they could pull up on the other cars just like they were going for slingshots. I mean, it reminisced like yesteryear, but yet it was so total today's racing. But that was my favorite moment.
Yeah, I think I'd have to hang on.
All right, Nathan, if you want to go, Danny.
All right. I'll probably say the last few Gen 6 races with the bigger spoiler package. 2019 fall race at Talladega was pretty entertaining. guys could get runs. It was super competitive, close finishes. The Coke 0400 I was at a few weeks ago was really good too, because I thought it was super competitive. It is a little different than the last package where you couldn't really get a run on the leader. You'd have to get a lane of 10 cars just to be able to make a pass. And I think the package did its purpose really well with guys being able to get runs on their own. And, the leader wasn't able to just sit there and control all the lanes. Like they had to make a real effort to stay there.
All right, Danny.
Yeah, again, yeah. I think I agree with Chad with the going away from the restricted plate to the tapered spacers, and that way you're getting more. They had more throttle control, and they had more. It was more like slingshots, but then again, I think one of the best just for pure strategy races was the one we were at where Stuart Haas just said, "Okay, we're going to line up and we're just going to kick everybody's butt."
Yeah.
But then again, NASCAR goes, "No, you're not. We're going to put our stamp on it at the end. We're going to make sure you either run out of gas or you're not going to win. Your own 4 cars aren't going to be 1, 2, 3, 4." So, and then you yelling bacon for the last 3 laps.
Yeah.
Alex.
Hey, man, I signed up for that sweepstakes. I'm mad that I didn't win that year's worth of bacon from Smithfield.
Yeah,
I was rooting on Eric Almirola that day harder than anyone else at that racetrack.
He had no voice left at all after that race, yelling bacon.
No, and that's beside the point. You should have heard him when Deanie came by in the truck.
Yeah.
He went nuts, yelling, "Deanie!" Same way he was yelling bacon at the end of the race. And Deanie actually did wave up toward the top because he heard him. But unfortunately, Deanie also, as soon as he got by, did this number right here and shook his head.
Hey,
he knew who he was.
After that race, I made that a tradition. And I said something about that when I met him at Atlanta a couple of races later. Maybe it was not the next year, but the year after that, going to driver intros. And he said, "Oh, that's you?" And so I at least have made a mark on my favorite driver, whether or not it's embarrassing. So I don't care.
But yeah, that was a heck of a strategy that Stuart Haas did, just to get all 4. We're just going to run 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to put these cars nose to tail, and they were almost like a 4-car tandem. I mean, it was kind of in the tandem racing. It was. And it was.
Your mic cut out there for a second, Danny. So.
Sorry. But yeah, it was just, to me, that's just some strategy. You just don't. You can't. You got your ego. I know a driver, you got to have your ego and just sit there, and you're not the lead car and just ride all day or be, second, third, or fourth. That took a lot of doing. I think that took a lot of strategy and a lot of restraint for those guys.
Well, not only that, but that same race he's talking about reminded you of that 92 race when those 4 cars broke away.
Yeah.
The best Gen 6 moment, I got 2 of them. And it was fall 2019
yes, sir.
and spring 2020. The 2 most recent Monday Talladega races. I am super biased. I'm going to tell you.
We're going to get that out of the way, too.
Extremely biased on this, all right? It has nothing to do with the racing. It's that my guy, Ryan Blaney, won both of them. I was at one, and I was watching the other one live. The way he
you were not at that race. You could not say that does not count.
I saw the start.
Hold on. I was at that race, too. Just because we didn't go back Monday because we had prior, things to do.
I was
at that race. We saw the best 76 laps of racing NASCAR had put on in their history to that point. Beside the point, we watched the race that Ryan Blaney won. It doesn't matter that we weren't on premises to watch him win.
Yep. Those were the best ones. I'm super biased, but to be fair, the package was also good there. I like the runs that the cars got. I like the fact that there was multiple grooves for the lead, and it wasn't just all train racing for the majority of the race like we've seen as of late and as we've saw the few years before that. I like the fact that multiple guys could get a run coming off turn 4 to get the win, not just 1 or 2 like we usually see. I mean, so bias aside, those are still good races anyway. But those are my favorite just because of who won.
Right. Now, if I would have to say the best Gen 6 moments, obviously the races in the last 2 years have been phenomenal. I can say I've seen Denny Hamlin win 3 Daytona 500s in the era, but to come down to me, it has nothing to do with a race. It was being in the stands and watching Dale Earnhardt Jr. win the pole for the last time at Talladega in October 2015. And my God, I have never felt the electricity I felt that day from the few people that stuck around for the truck race, and just the just goosebumps and everything that happened when everyone just shouted and screamed. Everyone in the stands. Doesn't matter if they were a Dale Jr. fan or not. They knew that was the last time that they were going to be able to see that at that racetrack, at the ground that his dad, just built per se, and it was just electrifying. I don't think I'll ever reach that same high in this sport again, and so that would be my favorite Gen 6 moment at a plate track. So going the opposite way, there was a lot of bad in the Gen 6 era when it comes to plate racing. So Daytona and Talladega, what were your guys' worst memories of Gen 6? During
being this is a Talladega episode, I don't think we can throw Daytona in there with it.
Yeah.
Anytime that I had to watch Joey Logano win a race in the Gen 6 car at Talladega is bad.
Too. I'm not so bad.
I don't mind Blaney, never minded Keselowski. I just have a very, very distinct dislike for Logano.
I do too. And, okay, I've got one for you. The same 2015 fall race. Joey Logano wins that race. Junior should have won that race because Kevin Harvick, down 2 cylinders, wrecks the field on the last restart to stay in the playoffs.
Now, hold on, Danny, because the fans don't know your favorite driver. Who is your favorite driver?
Kevin Harvick. I was rooting for Kevin Harvick that year, but I still think it was a bonehead. I still think that was a bonehead move. I mean, he manipulated.
And that kid in the background behind Danny is still crying because Junior lost that race.
Yeah, that was Jacob. Was that Junior at that time? This is for Kyle Larson. Jacob is now full blown Kyle Larson. He's drank the Kool-Aid, but the sprint, watching him in sprints and last year when he was out, and now this and before. But in 2015 it was Dale Jr. and it was that. Well, yeah, but then Dale Jr. was his guy, and it really that was you ought to heard him all the way home. It was bad.
Yeah.
He was still shaking mad when we got home to Noonan.
Oh man, I guess for mine, I'd probably go with if you can't bring in Daytona, obviously, the 2013 Daytona 500 was the single file train race, but they've happened at Talladega too. So I would probably say the worst out of the Gen 6 era have to be anytime they got in a single file train and they just rode, because you couldn't do anything to get a run on a leader at that point. There's just a bubble of air between you and the other car. So
yeah,
there were a couple of races in that time that were pretty rough.
Well, usually it was Dale Earnhardt Jr. leading them to the top, and they would all ride around. But it was also after they always did that to kind of calm the race down, because it was usually after a big wreck. So you just as Tony Stewart said, should just do a figure eight. Make it a figure eight track. So, but yeah, I agree that I never I don't know, when you're there. I guess when you're at the track, it's different, because watching it come by and this and that, and you're thinking. But when you're on the couch watching it and all they're showing is the first 4 cars of the, it does get kind of monotonous watching one long snake line.
So The 2018 fall is actually my worst race, just because not only was I watching it on TV, I just saw the banger of a truck race the day before with the whole Todd David Gilliland situation. That was you opened up a memory that I forgot I had. I forgot all about that race, and it was awesome. But man, just seeing those 4 cars just absolutely put everyone in the dust for like 160 something laps. And I had a buddy who was at that race too. And he's the one I went to the fall 2019 race with. And he even said, like, man, if it's anything like last year, like, we're leaving after the first stage because I'm not doing this again. So I know it was for us young fans that don't have the attention span. That was abysmal. Yeah.
But when you're there, though, you just don't watch the first 4 cars. You're watching the guys in the back going, why don't they're racing their guts out side by side, 3 wide, trying to be the first car in the next line to catch them. And then you're going, well, why don't they who cares who's in the lead? Just get in a line. You could run them down.
Yeah. To be fair, he was in the campground, so he couldn't see a ton. And so all he saw was 4 cars and then wait a second and then the pack,
Yeah. Well, there at one time you would see 4 cars and wait half a lap and see the rest of them.
Well, and he was only 26, so I mean, he didn't get to live through that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. For me, I don't think back to a bunch of the races. Obviously, seeing the Jimmy Johnson, Dale Jr. train races were not fun. Being a Denny Hamlin fan and being frustrated that he was always the one guy that wanted to make a run and nobody would go with him. Oh, yeah. There's plenty not to like in the Gen 6 era, don't get me wrong. But for me, again, not looking at a race, but when NASCAR started doing the elimination style qualifying, I was a fan of that everywhere. I think we stopped it, obviously because it turned into what Daytona was, the first Daytona 500 we tried it with, and that was, I believe, 2015's qualifying session. I mean, we went out there and looked like fools trying to get people to watch the Daytona 500 the next weekend, and just 2 complete, just wreck fests of 2 separate qualifying sessions. I don't know what NASCAR thought was going to happen, but that was probably the worst memory I could reminisce about, just because of the disappointment. I think I put myself on a pedestal as a fan, and just wanting the sport to do good, and then when they mess up, I have secondhand embarrassment for that, because that's something that I'm very passionate about, and I want to get my friends and random people that I meet throughout my life to come and join me, because it gives me so much joy. So when I see something just turn into a shit show like that, it really embarrasses me. But moving back to good things, let's move back to where we're going this weekend, Talladega, and there's plenty of memories that we could draw back from. So I want to open it up for anything that you can remember in the history of Talladega. What was your favorite thing? And it doesn't even have to be a race win or anything like that. It could be something as simple as watching Greg Biffle lead the race in the fall race of 2014 or 15, because everybody else was on a different strategy. I mean, just open wide. What was your favorite Talladega moment?
Well,
there's a lot of them.
My all-time favorite was, the funniest part was during that 4-hour fence rebuild in 1987, there was a couple of young ladies getting a hat passed around and everything, and the more cash they got in there, and then all of a sudden they turned around and took the bikini off, and my mom was sitting right next to me and tried to cover my eyes up. And I said, Mom, those are so small, they didn't need a hat to carry that. They should have thrown quarters.
Oh, Lord.
Mom, I put money in that hat.
Yeah. But, that's one of them. I mean, Talladega, it holds so many memories of just being there in person and not having to watch it on TV. I feel like I've been sort of blessed because I live in between Atlanta and Talladega, two of the fastest tracks on the circuit, you know, and they're an hour and 15 to an hour and 30 minutes away to get to see the history
Yeah.
that I've actually seen Buddy Baker win at Talladega. And that's where I also became a non-Dale Earnhardt fan because I was pulling for Dale Earnhardt in 1980, and Baker run him down. Earnhardt only took 2 tires. Baker had 4, and he run him down and passed him. Ever since then, I've hated Dale Earnhardt. I'm sorry, he let me down. That's just the way it is. Seeing Richard Petty win 197 May of '83 in person with my uncle, my dad, and my cousin. It was the 2 brothers and their sons together. Great memory. And what else can you go by other than you've seen some of the best wrecks that you've ever seen in person there? One of which where I got to see 34 car, I think that was Chris Buescher at the time, flipped down the back straightaway. Tried calling Alex for an hour and a half that morning, telling him to meet me at Talladega. He never would pick up the phone. I had a seat. He sat there and watched it in Troy while he was in college because he wouldn't pick up his phone. So,
Damn it, Alex.
I mean,
Listen, okay, I got home
it's
late
a
that
memory.
night because I was working at Subway and I didn't have my ringer on. So that's my worst
his story, and
Talladega
he's
memory. I didn't
sticking
want to
to
bring it up.
Yeah.
I put that in the back of my mind and I forgot about it. I'm mad that you brought it up. Now you done got me mad.
But think of this, the fact that you've seen Earnhardt win there. You've seen Darrell Waltrip. You've seen Richard Petty. I've seen Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr. I've seen the biggest icons in the sport win at Talladega in person. How many other folks can you say that may be able to say the same thing in today's still fandom of NASCAR? I mean, we've seen Davey Allison win there, you know, of course.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Harry Gant. And a lot of Harry Gant's wins came within 7 days of when Nolan Ryan threw a no-hitter. So every time he threw a no-hitter, Harry Gant was winning the next weekend.
Yeah.
And he won that Monday in '91. Look it up. Nolan Ryan threw a no-hitter the week before.
Huh. I never thought about that. I guess that's one of the things you got to be around to see.
Right. But I mean, and then we got the fact that we got to see the IROC races, and we were there at the first Busch race when it was Busch, and got to see the icons race with the Busch guys then. And, you know, there's just so many more, and some that I can honestly say it was going back as far as the 70s like I did, and getting to see I would say that I've probably went across 4, maybe almost 5 generations of NASCAR superstars, right? So to see that in person and watch them win is quite incredible.
All right, well, Danny, I think my dad just opened this question up to not just be your favorite Dega memory. But what does Talladega mean to you? I mean, we're getting philosophical with this one.
I know. Well, great friends. You know, Chad and I, you know, venturing there every year. Wouldn't have done it, you know, probably wouldn't have been going to that if it wasn't, you know, didn't have the friends to go. Again, my father just passed last week suddenly, and remembering, you know, the 91 and him taking me in 85 and going the years we, you know, together, you know, that'll be a memory. Those will be memories I have forever. Knowing, you know, my father liked NASCAR, but my father wasn't a rabid race fan. He was more of a drag racer. He always loved drag racing. So, and to get him to go and be there, I think he just did it because of both Chad and me. He thought of Chad as his son, and he was, you know, we did it as, you know, we did it like a family. And again, if you want to go to personal, I think when Chad got me those press passes in 2000, I saw Dale Earnhardt win his last race. That's really special to me. I mean, I'll never be able to repay Chad for that. Again, the wrecks. I mean, you remember the good times, you remember the bad times, and you always thought, well, every year you think, well, maybe Rusty Wallace will win a race, but then again, he's going to be flipping down either the front or the back straight every year. So, you remember the good times, you remember the bad races, you remember the good races, but they're all great memories.
Yeah. On the topic of races, I'd probably say there were 3 in my time that I really remember as, ones that stuck out as my childhood. And that's the 2010 spring race with all the tandem racing, the lead changes, that photo finish. That was one of my all-time favorites. The 2012 fall race was also really good too, up until the last lap pile up. And 2019 fall was also a really good one. So there's a lot of races that, I've gone back and watched that were really good, but those are the ones that I remember because I got to see them live.
So I'm going to narrow it down to one single moment. I wasn't even alive for this, but I've done so much research and watched so many videos and read so many articles about it. I am infatuated with this one single moment in Talladega, and it doesn't even have to do with racing. It is when the hold my beer and watch this was invented. It was in, I believe, 86, right before the race started. A fan went down on a pit road and jumped in the pace car.
May 86.
May 86, jumped in the pace car and ran it for a couple laps around Talladega. A fan stole the pace car. Anywhere else but Talladega, I probably wouldn't believe it.
And if he's a little less drunk, he could have got more laps because they didn't really block him in that hard.
Yeah. Yeah, whenever I think of Talladega, I think of, big pack racing, big wrecks, and this, that, and the other. But I always think about the fans stealing the pace car. That's a story that I tell people who aren't racing fans. Like, hey, this happened. Could you imagine a fan stealing the ball before an NFL game, right? That doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a wild thing.
I will also say the July 1984 race is on YouTube now. I would encourage you, if you have not seen it, to watch it. Granted, let's say the quality of it's not that great, but the fact that you see so many passes for the lead and so many passes that are unrecorded on the back straightaway going into turn 3 is incredible. That's one thing that you will not ever see again today, is something that happened like that back in the 80s. So I would definitely advise y'all to take a gander at that, because I was in the back straightaway for that one. It was awesome. And one of my all-time favorite cars got raced there. Ron Bouchard actually give up his, I love that simple yellow hood, roof, and white sides with the blue 47 on it. But it was blue on top or red on top and blue on the sides. I can't remember which one it was now, but it said Hawaiian Punch, and it had the big Hawaiian Punch dude on the front, on the hood. That was awesome.
Yeah, well, I think for me, Talladega, it's kind of something different. I claim my home track as Atlanta Motor Speedway just because it's closer, and my dad working there and getting us in the garage and stuff. We've done so much stuff there, but walking into Talladega has always been somewhere that just kind of puts you in a different mindset. And whether or not the racing is good, it's always fun. I mean, I feel like I remember a lot more of the memories there, especially going with you two and Jake and Ben. Just being able to make those memories is kind of something I wish we could do again, because it was so nice to have a core group of guys to just go and do a race with. And I love tandem racing. I feel like I was more entertained until the current big ass spoiler package came along, that tandem racing was so much more entertaining to watch in person than pack racing after that. So I'll say that. But my favorite memory was the second time, the second Talladega race since Myra and I started dating. She came with us and sat with the five of us.
Yeah.
And Chase Elliott took out Daniel Suarez in the Camping World 19 JGR car. And Ben had to say something, and she cussed him out in Spanish.
She did. Yes, she did.
And it was the most hilarious thing I have ever seen.
I ain't never seen somebody sit down so quick in my life.
He looked scared shitless, man.
And also in that race, Chase Elliott took out Kyle Larson, and that was when Jake had started liking Kyle Larson. You know, it was before that. Yeah, you were liking Kyle, but you were liking Dale Jr. too and all. But yeah, he took out Kyle Larson in that race too. So, and that got Jake riled up.
Yeah, that was a fun time. That was probably my best Talladega memory.
And like
I know
said,
she's probably watching, so she's probably laughing, remembering that. But Ben's face when she started talking it was comical. And we give Ben a rough time anyways, but you guys just had to be there. It was the funniest shit I've ever seen.
Man, somebody kicked Ben's puppy and then shot it right there in front of him. That's the look he had on his face.
and like I said, Ben is the Chase Elliott fanboy. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, lesson learned. Chase Elliott's a dick.
Yeah, Chase Elliott is a dick. Not the first time he's done that. Trust me, I get to hear it every time something happens to the 99 on Sundays or the 12 for that matter, or the 23 because she's a Blaney and Bubba fan as well.
I think getting a team off the subject, getting a teammate for both of those teams is going to really help them next year.
Yeah. And that's a good segue, Danny, because we are about to go into next gen NASCAR. So we kind of reminisced about Gen 6, and I did want to ask, as guys that have been around for some time, seeing pre-plate and now post-plate racing, tandem racing, train racing, pack racing with or without the wicker bill, massive runs that just didn't happen because of the air bubble and stuff like that. This next gen car is going to change what we know at Talladega and Daytona from now on. And I kind of wanted to get an insight on what you guys think this new package is going to do after the comments that we've gotten from Denny Hamlin and Chris Buescher and the other guys a couple weeks ago at Daytona. Basically, like the side draft is gone and the steering is so odd that they don't know if they can make these runs.
Danny, you go first.
Well, it's going to be like any. I think this next gen car is going to come out and it's going to be like the COT car was in 2007. You know, they said the same thing about the COT car. They said, "Oh, this is crap. We don't like it. It doesn't steer. It doesn't this. It doesn't that." Kyle Busch wins the first race in it. At Bristol, gets out of the car, says, "I won the race, but this car is shit." You know, so it's the same thing. They're getting out of something they know to something they don't know, and the engineer. This is everything they're doing right now is, and I think not having the side force on the car is going to be better. It's going to be back to kind of old school Gen 3 cars type, Gen 4 car type thing. I don't think you need to build in a lot of side force on the car. I think you need to have straight up just down force. If you're going to make your runs, you're going to get your runs off, you know, getting a slingshot or old. I think it's going to be more of an old school thing, like we saw way back in the 90s when you had to back off the car and make a run to get a pass. So I think it's good. But again, when the car comes out, are there going to be bugs in it? Yeah. Are there bugs in it now? Yeah. I mean, they also said it didn't dry, but they also said it cooked them. So it said it was a very hot car. So there's things they need to work out, but they'll work it out, and it'll become, you know, look at the COT car. When it first came out, fans didn't like it. They didn't like the wing. They didn't like this. They didn't like that. It evolved through to 2012, and by 2009, 2010, it got to be a pretty good race car. He was putting on good races.
Absolutely.
2010 or was it 2010 2000 Atlanta race where Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson went at it for what, the last 60 laps.
Yeah, that was
I mean,
2011.
2011, yeah. So that it's going to be a work in progress. I do like the way that they're going more toward modern suspension and sequential transmissions. I still up in the air about one lug nut. I kind of think a car needs 5. If it's more like a stock car, it still needs to be that way of a stock car, 5 lug nuts. But I understand why they can't do it with the way they're doing the wheels. Again, if they have any problems, it's going to be a real hassle to change. It's going to be a real hassle to change transmissions when they get practice again. It's going to be a hassle to change clutches with a torque tube. So, but I think they're going in a good direction. I really don't see that diffuser on the back being a huge deal. I think it's something more, especially like if you're Talladega and Daytona if you bump draft and you're going to knock it off, are you going to be able to knock it off the car?
Right.
So that's something they got to look at. But in all, I think it's a good. They're going forward, and I also like Corey LaJoie in his Twitter taking pictures of all the parts of the car. Today he posted the shocks. A couple weeks ago he posted the rear suspension. Then before that, the front suspension. So he's actually showing everybody what the car is.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
So,
all right, Chet.
Well, I have actually definitely come across the 84 Talladega 500, of course, and then I'm thinking 89, 90, 91 is going to be the racing you get for a couple of years. Granted, the engineering of these cars or the engineers working on these cars will have them so different in a year and a half compared to what they're getting right now. I know that all the teams are behind, so they're studying as much as they can, but how much are these teams going to be able to change them to make their possibilities greater on track? They've eliminated all the gray areas for the most part, right? I mean, it's basically a kit car. You might as well go pick up a Erdo model, and this is what you're actually got. Everything's the same, molded the same way. The only thing different is the body itself. So who did their best work in the aerodynamic package for downforce and speed? That's where I see that this is actually going to go toward manufacturer dominance instead of the racing. But if stuff is a little bit slower, can you tell the difference in the cars going 5 miles an hour faster on TV than 215? If they're doing 210 or 200 or 195, can you tell that? Sitting in the stands, you're going to be able to tell it. But I do believe that all of these cars will put on a good show no matter what, given time.
Right.
The first 5 or 6 races, somebody's going to dominate the snot out of every race, unfortunately. If somebody's going to hit that perfect setup because of that rear suspension being, it's not one big piece under there anymore. It's independent. Steering's a little different. Somebody's going to figure out how to work with those ducts and everything to where they're coming out, and the next thing you know, that pan underneath the car to where they are trying to eliminate the fact that all of these spots are having to be done with now on the cars, the innovation. That diffuser, all it's going to do is dump a ton of air on that other car following it, making it harder to pass, is my first thought for the first few races until they figure this out. But then again, it could be opposite. I could be thinking the wrong way, is if a car's right there underneath it, that diffuser, what happens if it just rolls that air back up under there and starts to lift that car up in the corner? And next thing you know, you watch 2 or 3 of them go in there and one behind the next one. And this one's fine, but this one right here goes, bam, right in the wall. It could create some cool wrecks. It could create some headaches. But that's one of the things that I'm just welcome to see. You know, I was one of the skeptics. Alex will tell you when they put that COT on the racetrack, and I said, what the hell are they doing with a wing? But to be honest with you, that wing and everything did pretty well with downforce, better than a spoiler. But it just looked odd to the typical fan.
And couldn't go backwards. That was the other problem.
Yeah,
Don't turn them around. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Nathan, what's your biggest concern with speedway racing next year?
My biggest thing is the diffuser, like you guys said. I feel like something that hasn't been talked about is, you know, with underbody downforce and stuff like that. If you go watch open wheel races, if an F1 car or an Indy car gets floor damage, they become like virtually undrivable to the point where, you know, if somebody gets hit and their floor gets damaged, then they lose 60% of the downforce, and then they're uncompetitive for the rest of the day. You know, what happens if you get hit in the back a little bit hard and your bumper gets crinkled up and the diffuser gets crinkled up? You know, like, does your car suddenly become impossible to handle because the downforce is messed up? And I also wonder about the closing rates. That's the biggest thing for me, because I think what's made the last package, the one we have now, so good is that the cars can close up to one another. They can get big runs and slingshot each other like the older package couldn't do in the first few years of the Gen 6. So I'm just hoping that you're able to get enough closing rates and you're able to build a run and, you know, be able to make passes on the guys in front of you.
Yeah, none of my concerns with the Gen 7 come with super speedway racing. I think it'll be all right. Granted, I'm going to side with Danny here in the fact that it's going to take a little bit for the teams to figure out, but all in all, I think we're going to see a pretty good super speedway package, because that's kind of NASCAR's baby. That's their bread and butter. That's where they get the most of their ratings from. So they're going to do whatever it takes to keep that pretty damn good racing, or at least close to what they have. All mine come from the safety of the cars, being the heat, or what, you know, the tests that we've heard about. Things like that in the mile and a half. So I've kind of heard some up and down things about. But as far as super speedway goes, I'm pretty optimistic about that as far as the next gen car.
Yeah, I think I would probably say I'm more optimistic about everywhere. I know that the horsepower is not what I obviously want. I'd love to see 1,000 horsepower. You know, whether that's from a pushrod V8 or a twin turbo V6, I don't care. I just want to see these guys go manhandle these cars again, something we hadn't seen since 2014, honestly. But my biggest fear is something that Nathan brought up, and that's closing rates and not being able to pass. I hope that NASCAR, once they fix the temperature thing, because they got to get that first. That's my first priority, like Colton said, with safety, because I don't want them to be like, well, we can't go out there and race 500 miles every week anymore, because I'm tired of hearing that from fans. If the racing's good, they'll be able to watch it. Hands down. You can watch a 600-mile race every weekend if the racing's good. I need them to focus on being able to pass on these speedways, and then also take it to the mile and a half as well. I want to see a 1/2 inch to 1 inch wicker bill on the roof like they did in 2001, and I want to see a wicker bill on the spoiler like they have now, but it wouldn't be a gigantic big-ass spoiler, maybe a 3 or 4 inch spoiler. Reduce a little bit of that downforce so they're waggling, as DW says, through the turns, but have a little bit of that dirty air come back so that you've got something that they can suck up on. That's my biggest fear, is that they're not going to be able to pass, and that's what's so good about this current package.
Yeah, and get away from restrictor plates. The Saturday racing has been better now than the Sunday racing.
Oh, for sure.
So, and I don't why can't NASCAR see that? You know, their lower series is putting on a better show than their upper series on these 1.5 mile and 2 mile tracks. You know, then, you know, okay, well, what are we doing wrong? So they got a blind eye to it. So
Yeah. Well, we don't lift, and I think everyone in the industry knows that. Obviously, NASCAR doesn't give a shit what we think.
that's
They don't
right.
give a shit what the drivers think. They don't give a shit what the crews think. They think they know best, and that's going to be the downfall of them. And I know that we've talked about that week after week. But interestingly, that you bring that up, so one of the things from the Xfinity cars that I think we all can agree is phenomenal is the bodies. The composite bodies. We're going to that in the Cup next year. But Nathan, you brought up something. Just going to be the last thing tonight. Is that the bodies are pretty durable. We won't have that much damage to worry about with cut tires and stuff like that. But everything under the car might be a little bit more flimsy. You mentioned the fusers, but what about wheel-to-wheel contact with an independent rear system?
Well, I heard this from a couple of people on Twitter, engineers. Ryan Keselowski is another one. They mentioned that the suspension and the tires are a little bit more fragile, so direct contact, maybe it won't cut the tire down, but it might bend something in the suspension. You might break tie rods or whatever,
and that's more catastrophic.
Become a race-ending situation. You don't want to have that happen. So,
well, also breaking. Well, also like a rear wheel contact. You've got this transaxle in the back. It's going to be like an Indy car. You touch tires, you're going to break a half shaft.
Right, and that's why I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, you're going to you'll break a half shaft, or you'll and then you're going to spin out because you don't have the positive traction drive off the corners, and it's done. So that's something you got to look at, and that will make it more fragile. Man, I can remember the time I had a Cavalier and I went over a bump too hard and I broke both half shafts in a Cavalier. So it's the same kind. They're not that much more durable. I mean, they are durable. They're race proven, but I mean, I think you're going to see that.
Yeah.
And these aluminum wheels are going to get beat up too in contact.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that they maybe not have put enough forethought into for changing all that stuff. I'm looking forward to it. I think we're all I guess, what's the word I'm trying to look for?
Apprehensive, maybe.
A little bit. I would say apprehensive, maybe
cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. An optimistic skeptic or something along the lines of that. So it's been a fantastic show, guys. I appreciate you two coming on. I know we wanted to do this for Talladega. I know it morphed in a little bit more than Talladega, and I appreciate that. Getting people from different age ranges. Not trying to call you old, but you've been doing this for a while. As a NASCAR fan, you guys have been around since the 80s or 70s, and we got Nathan who's only 19. So, I mean, it's fun to get a group of people kind of have like a little bit of a roundtable discussion about all this. So I really appreciate you guys coming on, of course. So before we go, does anybody have any final thoughts?
Yeah. I guess on the topic of the next gen, how you guys mentioned the thought of one driver hitting that and just running away with the first handful of races. And I might look like an idiot for saying this next year, but I feel like Truex is going to be that guy because nobody ever thought of him like this a few years ago. But look at how well he adapts to new things when it comes to. He'd never been on dirt. He wins the truck race on dirt. He'd never been on dirt in a Cup car. Finishes third in that, and it's like. He's got very good throttle control. He also likes a sensitive steering box, and that's something that the next-gen car is supposedly going to have, according to the first few guys who tested it. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's the one that hits on it.
Another thing to add on to that, I know Cole Pern was his crew chief, and now he's got James Small, who's no slouch, so don't get me wrong here. But he was the one, those two guys – and I'm sure James Small fits in with this for the next-gen car, took to stages before anyone else. And that's why they won that.
They're going to take to the new Aero and stuff like that before anybody else with the diffuser.
Well, I mean, there's a few. I mean, you think the big teams will do that. So, I mean, Kyle Busch won the first COT race. So he takes to things. So and he did it in a Hendrick car. It's just a true driver, a a good driver, they're all going to take to it. So
Yeah.
it's just who can, And again, what was that?
Probably
yeah,
my headset.
but yeah.
All right, so
another thing, talking about Talladega, Jimmy Spencer gets one of his 2 wins there, and here's a funny thing: I wasn't a big Jimmy Spencer fan back in the '90s, and Chad can quote this. Walking down the steps, I didn't come here to watch Jimmy Spencer win this effing race. But you got to admit he had a good. I mean, you can say what they say now, but Junior Johnson built a good car. He won the race. So, but yeah, you don't go there. It's like Jacob and Chad. You don't go there to watch. You don't go there to watch Joey Logano win, and I didn't go there to watch anybody else win. You go there to watch your guy win, and you get pissed. You kind of leave a little. If you're not a little pissed when you leave, then you're not a fan of your guy,
Yeah. All right. Well, if no one has anything else, I guess I'll go ahead and send it off. Again, I want to thank you guys for coming on, and thanks for sticking around. It's been another long one. We've been doing that. It seems a little bit lately, but you know what? I think it's worth it. We've had a couple different conversations tonight, with us about Vegas. We got Talladega this weekend. We talked to Johnny Eckert, champion of the All-American ARCA Series that you guys are going to watch tomorrow night after getting the link from us on Twitter at 8:30 and root for us in the 85, the 46, and the 26 tomorrow night for Fan Fuel Motorsports. And then, of course, our pretty lengthy conversation with Chad and Danny. What a wonderful night. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, thank you again. And go follow us on Twitter at FanFuelMSM. That's capital F, capital F, capital MSM. And be a part of our action at fanfuelmotorsports.com by emailing us your thoughts about races, articles that you've wanted to write about different opinion pieces or theoretical stuff. Give us some conspiracy theories. We'll put our tinfoil hats on with you. You can do that at fanfuelpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get you signed on into the website and put you on there and feature you there. I know my dad's done a couple diecast stuff. All of us has putting some stuff up there. We had a really good one on the the Chase era coming through. And other than that, we'll see you next week. Thanks again, guys. Talk to you later.